accidentally touching a handsome guy's abs. If it were you, would you take responsibility? A young man in red clothes was being chased by a group of people on the street. All kinds of fruits and vegetables were being thrown at him recklessly. Finally, he was cornered in a dead end. Damn it, who was the idiot who built a wall here? This is going to be the end of him. The pursuers were catching up, holding wooden sticks. If they catch him, they'll surely spank him. That's absolutely unacceptable. It turns out this man had been hiding in the casino earlier. With no money to pay, he could only run. How could they not give the boss a break, considering he was their regular customer? As the two men got closer, Feng Qing had nowhere to retreat, so he proposed a game to the two men. The two men sensed something was off. This guy was too cunning and unpredictable. The next second, Feng Qing took out a grappling hook. To the two men's surprise, he flew directly onto the wall. This scene stunned the two men below. But they couldn't fly, could they? Feng Qing said to the two men below, if they could catch him, he'd pay them immediately. Otherwise, they might as well go home and sleep. The men below were furious, so he had been playing them all along. They swore to skin him alive when they caught him. However, just as one of them was about to act, he was stopped by the other. He whispered to his partner that this wall seemed to belong to that lord's mansion. At his words, the image of that lord appeared in both their minds. He was definitely someone they couldn't afford to offend. Although the brat before them was incredibly annoying, they didn't want to anger that lord. Otherwise, their lives would be forfeit. After weighing the pros and cons, they decided to leave quickly after throwing some threats. But strangely, they stumbled and fell after just a few steps. Feng Qing hadn't heard their conversation earlier. He thought these two had become cowards after seeing his skills. Could it really be as he thought? He became more and more pleased. He even started laughing out loud. This is impossible. Due to his overconfidence, the tile he was leaning on suddenly fell off. He lost his balance and fell backwards. He thought he'd at least get a couple of big bumps on his head, but surprisingly, he felt no pain at all. He opened his eyes and saw an incredibly handsome face. What did this person eat to look so good? The man looked at Feng Qing with annoyance. Why haven't you let go yet? Only then did Feng Qing realize. His hand was pressing against a large area of abs. The feeling wasn't bad at all. The man clearly hadn't expected Feng Qing to act so shamelessly. His eyes instantly turned cold. Feng Qing finally realized he had touched a real man. He quickly apologized to the man. He said he didn't mean to touch his little granddaughter. If he wanted compensation for mental or physical damages, that was fine, but he'd have to put it on credit today. This unfortunate man was not only severely poisoned, but also had his abs touched by another man. If it were you, what would you do? Feng Qing touched a handsome guy's abs and wanted to run away. But as he was leaving, his grappling hook accidentally caught on the man's clothes. It seemed like he wasn't going to escape so easily. The next second, Feng Qing was pulled back into the man's arms. This made Feng Qing feel awkward. This man was so handsome. He didn't look like a bad person, so why did he pull him back? Feng Qing got up and apologized to the man again, asking what compensation he needed. Unexpectedly, the man coldly replied, "Then pay with your life." This answer immediately scared Feng Qing. Could this man be an idiot? Feng Qing continued to reason with him. It wasn't intentional, so why demand his life? His life was very precious, you know? The man was unhappy. This brat wanted to leave after taking advantage of him? It wouldn't be that easy. Feng Qing looked the man up and down. He had the most handsome face, but wanted to do the most despicable things. Moreover, he noticed the man's words earlier. He had referred to himself as this prince. The next second, Feng Qing thought of a possibility. Coming from an official family, he knew something about this. The only prince left in the capital was the one known as the King of Hell, Prince Jun. Could it really be as he thought? He must have left home without checking his horoscope today to get into such big trouble. Feng Qing was sweating profusely. Indeed, it was another big trouble caused by good looks. But seeing how this guy didn't seem very smart, he wondered if he could get away smoothly this time. Feng Qing left awkwardly at Junye. He then turned to escape, but Junye's gaze was fixed on Feng Qing's movements. Just as his foot left the ground, he was caught. Their eyes met. Junye again threatened to take his life. Since force wouldn't work, he had to try a softer approach. Feng Qing widened his eyes, trying to find any sign of BS in Junye's eyes. Such an innocent look was clearly something Junye had never seen before. Taking advantage of his momentary lapse in vigilance, Feng Qing quickly grabbed Junye's collar. The next second, Junyi was pinned to the ground by him. Junyi was furious. Did this brat have a death wish? Unfortunately, such threats were like tickles to Feng Qing. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well take advantage of this handsome man a bit first. Hearing Feng Qing's words, Junyi was terrified. How did he end up meeting such a bizarre person today? He even wanted to take advantage of him. Oh heavens, someone save him. He didn't want his lifelong reputation ruined by this man. However, at this moment, Feng Qing, who was holding Junye's hand, suddenly realized something was off. This prince didn't seem to be in good shape. He thought, how could a prince with supreme martial arts be so easily pushed down? It turns out he wasn't well. At this point, Junyi had almost lost his rationality. He was helpless against this brat who was half a head shorter than him. Feng Qing's heart softened for a moment. This was their people's hero. He couldn't let him be ruined like this. He then took out a sachet from his pocket. He might as well do a good deed. Feng Qing brought the pill to Junye's mouth. But Junyi was still unwilling, trying to muster all his strength to beat up this brat. Seeing the pill in front of him, he angrily scolded Feng Qing, asking what he was trying to do to him now. Pity the hearts of parents in this world. This father had it tough to catch his son and make him mend his ways. He chased his son all over the streets. This story starts from when Feng Qing broke into the war prince's mansion. Seeing that the man refused to take his antidote, Feng Qing thought of a plan. He stripped the man's clothes, intending to do something to him. But this method seemed completely ineffective on Junyi. However, Feng Qing wasn't worried. For those who don't like taking medicine, he had an even simpler and more violent method, a mouthful of poison. Hearing this, Junye's face turned green with fear. He didn't want to give his first kiss to a man. Resigned to his fate, he obediently opened his mouth to take the medicine. Not long after, people came searching in this direction. But by then, Feng Qing was long gone. Junyi held the sachet in his hand, fuming. Given the chance, he would definitely strip that brat's ass himself. This man was in the living room of the war prince's mansion. Lu Rushi was inexplicably fed a strange pill by Feng Qing today, so he called Lu Rushi over to see if there was any problem. Traditional Chinese medicine emphasizes observation, smelling, inquiry, and pulse-taking. Looking at his ruddy complexion, he didn't seem to have any issues. However, upon learning that Junyi was mysteriously fed medicine, he still took his pulse for him. What he found was shocking. Junyi, seeing Lu Rushi's expression, couldn't help but worry. He was already severely poisoned. If things got worse, he'd have to prepare his coffin tonight. However, Lu Rushi said that the pill Junyi took was not only harmless, but also suppressed the cold poison in his body. If they could find the person who made the medicine, there was at least a 90% chance of curing him. This news was more shocking than if he had eaten excrement. He originally thought he had met a madman, but it turned out to be someone who could save him. Even TV dramas wouldn't dare to script it like this. Meanwhile, Feng Qing was embracing beauties on both sides, drinking fine wine and occasionally teasing the beauties. Unexpectedly, the door was kicked open. Feng Qing was startled by the sound, nearly dropping his wine glass. Feng Qing looked at the man before him in disbelief. Who else could it be but his father? Feng Qing feared nothing in heaven or earth except his old man Feng Ling. Who would have thought he could track him here? To avoid being caught and taken back by Feng Ling, his only choice was to escape through the window. But it was so high up. Was he sure he wouldn't get caught this way? At this moment, the onlookers below also noticed Feng Qing, shouting loudly that someone was trying to end their life. Even more bizarre was that these onlookers not only didn't try to persuade him, but were applauding and cheering. This drove Feng Ling crazy. Did he raise a son or a monkey? Why did he like to climb around so much? Feng Ling thought he would restrain himself, but unexpectedly, he actually jumped out of the window. Feng Ling lay flat on the ground, and bystanders dared not make a sound. Surprisingly, upon hearing Feng Ling's voice, he sprang up again and fled. Feng Ling didn't expect his son to be so difficult to handle. It really infuriated him, but Feng Ling only focused on running. He didn't anticipate that in the next second, he would crash into a horse's leg. Looking at the rearing horse, Feng Qing felt that this time he was really done for. Can you believe it? This youth dressed in red clothes was actually a woman. Feng Qing, trying to avoid his father's pursuit, unexpectedly crashed into an oncoming horse's leg. He thought he would die like this. However, the expected pain didn't come. When he opened his eyes, he saw two living people standing before him. Before he could react, those two had already grabbed him. This scene stunned Feng Ling. Had his son caused some trouble again? The carriage curtain lifted, revealing a familiar face. Feng Qing was dumbfounded. How could he run into this group everywhere? And Junyi even said in front of Feng Ling that he and Feng Qing had known each other for a long time. What the hell? The next second, Feng Qing was thrown directly into the carriage. Feng Ling not only had no objection to this, but also applauded. Feng Qing really doubted if he was picked up from somewhere. Facing this face, he was extremely nervous. He must have been sold out by his father. Junyi knew about Feng Qing's reputation even without deliberately investigating. He was purely a spoiled rich kid, but he didn't know he also understood medicine. He didn't beat around the bush and directly asked Feng Qing how he knew about his poisoning. Feng Qing smiled and said it might be a man's intuition. He couldn't just tell this man that he had transmigrated with memories from his previous life. This excuse was flimsy. Even a pig wouldn't believe it. But even so, where did the medicine come from? Feng Qing said without blushing or his heart racing, "I once helped a divine doctor, and he gave it to me." Junyi looked at Feng Qing as if he was looking at an idiot. Did he think he was a 3-year-old child? Junyi wanted to say something more, but suddenly his illness flared up. The next second, he fell directly onto Feng Qing. Even insurance fraudsters wouldn't dare to act like this. And where was his hand touching? Oh no. Would his identity be exposed? Would he discover that he was a woman? However, looking at Junye's expression, he didn't seem to have discovered his female identity. This relieved Feng Qing, but also made him conflicted. Was he that unattractive? He didn't even notice. Plus, his hand was very cold. It must be the cold poison acting up. Just as they arrived at the War Prince's mansion, Feng Qing, with strength from who knows where, directly picked up Junyi. He asked people to prepare hot water and bring a bathtub into the room. At this time, Lu Rushi also hurried over. Their eyes met, and both were surprised. Then Feng Qing asked Lu Rushi to take him to the kitchen. Lu Rushi wouldn't have it. In the prince's mansion, the person who could order her around certainly wasn't him. Was this person trying to enter the kitchen to poison someone? Feng Qing didn't like hearing this. He came to treat an illness, yet he was accused of trying to poison someone. As a doctor's pride, Lu Rushi absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to casually treat his patient, and to give him orders too. It's as if anyone could claim to be a doctor. Then, from his 2 fingers, a peculiar smell wafted over. But Feng Qing saw this scene clearly. Seeing Lu Rushi's smug expression, Feng Qing smirked coldly. The next second, he directly grabbed Lu Rushi's face, daring to play tricks right under his nose. Is this face thick enough? Looks like he needs to teach him a lesson. The next second, Lu Rushi was shocked because he realized he had been poisoned. When did this happen? He didn't notice at all. How terrifying. Feng Qing just wanted to teach Lu Rushi a lesson and couldn't be bothered to continue tormenting him. Seeing someone coming, he quickly asked that person to take him to the kitchen. Any later, and the prince's life couldn't be saved. The tragic Lu Rushi was on the verge of tears. Everyone had left, so what about his poison? Why couldn't his damned medical skills solve this poison? In the end, it was the servant behind who noticed Lu Rushi still standing there and asked Feng Qing how to deal with him. Feng Qing couldn't even be bothered to look at him properly. If that's the case, just carry him. This woman not only cross-dresses, but also likes to flirt with the prince. If it were you, would you be afraid? Lu Rushi had always been a guest official in the War Prince's mansion, and people here respected her very much. But hearing from Feng Qing that Lu Rushi should be carried, she was utterly incredulous. Feng Qing walked up to Lu Rushi and joked that this guy had been treating the prince's illness for so long without any improvement. Carry him up, let him witness his prowess, and broaden his horizons. After saying this, he even knocked on Lu Rushi's head. This guy even dared to glare at him. Unbelievable. The frustrated Lu Rushi could only make empty threats, unable to move at all. In the end, he could only resign himself to being dragged away by the servants. Feng Qing placed Lu Rushi at the doorway, a suitable position for observation. Then he walked in by himself. His motion of bringing clothes was just seen by Junyi as he woke up. The next second, his face turned pale with fright. This brat wouldn't try to take advantage of him again, would he? Perhaps it's because he's naturally flirtatious. Feng Qing didn't deny Junye's words. 2 people taking off clothes? Of course, they were going to do something indescribable. Junyi finally couldn't bear it anymore. He immediately cursed Feng Qing as a gay, fake man. But the more he did this, the more excited someone seemed to become, who knows how his brain works. Sigh. The next second, Junyi was stunned again. He felt things were reversing too quickly. He couldn't quite keep up. At this time, Feng Qing was clearly treating his illness, but he kept spouting some lewd comments. He had never seen such a person before. It completely shattered his worldview. He couldn't help but compare his skin to that of a brothel courtesan. His little hand was crawling all over his chest. He was about to explode with anger. The next second, two shadows suddenly appeared out of thin air. This really scared Feng Qing. It turns out Junyi had an ace up his sleeve. Wonder if it's too late to take back those words now. This time he really chickened out. He wouldn't dare to tease the prince like that again. He said he was possessed by a ghost girl earlier. Give him another chance. He has elderly parents and young children at home, and a little cat in between. If he dies like this, Junyi would be a sinner. Junyi was utterly annoyed by him, but he didn't pursue it further. However, if he dared to talk nonsense again, he'd rip out his tongue. Feng Qing nodded obediently, as if making a public apology. Junyi pulled his clothes back and asked Feng Qing how else he needed to cooperate for the treatment. But Feng Qing once again showed a lewd expression, telling him to take off his pants. This Feng Qing was really testing Junyi's patience. This Feng Qing was really dancing on his red line. The next second, Feng Qing brought out a fish bucket from somewhere, saying it was for soaking his feet. He told him not to always have those messy thoughts in his head, and emphasized again that he was a proper doctor and wouldn't do anything inappropriate. Well, even though this excuse was far-fetched, it fooled Junyi again. Then he thought of something else. The current war prince seems to be a useless person who can't even stand up. He really wanted to laugh. What to do? This woman not only cross-dresses, but also wants to take off a man's pants. If it were you, what would you do? Due to Feng Qing's inappropriate behavior, Junyi decided to let Lu Rushi handle the pants-removing task. Seeing that this good opportunity didn't fall to him, Feng Qing felt a bit dejected. What a great chance, and it slipped right by him. Helpless, Feng Qing could only walk to the door to release Lu Rushi's acupoints. Even though he couldn't do it himself, Feng Qing still couldn't change his attitude of not giving up without seeing everything. His drool was almost dripping onto Junyi's leg. Fortunately, Junyi was quick to stop Feng Qing's shameless behavior. Even when washing his feet, he couldn't help but let his hands crawl all over his feet. Junyi was almost driven crazy by the person in front of him. However, at this moment, Lu Rushi, who had just gone out to get something, returned and heard an unpleasant sound from the room. Oh no, it seems he discovered something unpleasant again. Feng Qing greeted Lu Rushi and asked him to join in. Lu Rushi refused without thinking. He was still just a child and didn't want to die yet. Look at what he's saying. Helpless, Feng Qing could only forcibly drag him in. Looking at the person in front of him, Lu Rushi felt an inexplicable despair. He didn't have the courage to challenge Junyi's authority. Even after starting, his hands kept shaking nonstop, which made Feng Qing very dissatisfied. Seeing the opportunity was ripe, Feng Qing made an excuse to go to the toilet. As soon as he left the room, he ran away swiftly. He didn't want to stay for dinner. Just as he was happily thinking he was about to escape from the war prince's mansion, unexpectedly, two shadows suddenly appeared. The next second, without a word, they lifted Feng Qing up entirely. As Feng Qing looked up, he saw Junyi sitting on the edge of the bed with an icy face. He was indignant and questioned Junyi if he was trying to forcibly abduct a civilian man. However, Junyi seemed indifferent to Feng Qing's questioning. He claimed that not letting him go back was actually helping him. It turns out Junyi had somehow heard that Feng Ling had already found a fiancé for Feng Qing. If he went back now, they were waiting for him to return home and get married. Oh my, he's actually a woman. What's there to clarify? Feng Qing grabbed Junyi's hands and said, "If that's the case, then please take me in." That night, Feng Qing was happily bathing, thinking he could finally relax after a tiring day. However, the next moment, Junyi pushed the door open again. This caught Feng Qing off guard. Could it be that this guy had discovered he was a woman? But thinking about it, that shouldn't be possible. At this moment, Feng Qing once again showed his roguish smile. He asked if Junyi was too lonely at night, hoping to disgust Junyi away. However, Junyi blankly stretched out a hand, saying his leg was uncomfortable and asking Feng Qing to quickly check it. This left Feng Qing speechless. While Feng Qing was taking his pulse, Junyi noticed that his collarbone was so beautiful, just like a woman's. This thought startled him, but thinking carefully, he felt it was impossible. Panicked, he could only leave at this point. This woman not only likes to cross-dress as a man, but also likes to flirt with the prince. If it were you, what would you do? To punish Junyi for peeking at him bathing last night, Feng Qing specially made a bowl of medicine bitterer than bitter melon for Junyi to drink. When Junyi drank it all in one go, he almost thought he was going to heaven. Seeing Junyi's toothache-like expression, Feng Qing slowly took out some candy and waved it in front of him. He thought Junyi wouldn't need such things, but in the end, his teeth were still hurting badly, so he obediently ate it. Next came Feng Qing's main battlefield. Does the prince need a massage? Let me help you take off your pants. Junyi exploded again. He should only be poisoned, not have high blood pressure. Otherwise, he'd really need to prepare his coffin. Seeing Feng Qing's demonic hands approaching, Junyi quickly grabbed Lu Rushi. Hurry up and get out here. However, this time, Junyi was destined to be disappointed, because Lu Rushi had already been sent by Feng Qing to buy medicine. With no choice, Junyi had to resign himself to his fate. During the massage, Feng Qing still occasionally uttered some indecent words. However, as far as Junyi knew, although Feng Qing frequently visited brothels, he had never touched a woman. Even the few personal maids in his mansion, he hadn't touched them. This was very strange. Could it be that Feng Qing really had no interest in women? Was he really gay? Just as Junyi wanted to clarify this matter, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. Your Highness, the poison you requested has arrived. Hearing this, Feng Qing's eyes immediately lit up. He loved poisons the most. Junyi explained that knowing Feng Qing liked poisons, he specially got this as a thank you gift for treating his leg ailment. Looking at the snow-white venomous snake, he really couldn't resist wanting to touch it. Feng Qing thought about it and did just that. The next second, the snow-white venomous snake suddenly opened its bloody mouth. This scene scared Junyi so much he broke out in a cold sweat. However, Feng Qing didn't seem to take this matter to heart. In the emergency, Junyi hurriedly grabbed Feng Qing's hand. Without hesitation, he put it in his mouth. This time it was Feng Qing who was stunned. What on earth was this guy doing? The next second, a mouthful of poisonous blood was sucked out by Junyi. At the same time, he fell straight down. Who knows how long it took before Junyi slowly woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Feng Qing playing with a snake in his hand. The snake was flicking its tongue at Feng Qing's hand, but it looked exceptionally docile. In Feng Qing's words, this snake was now his pet, and he would take good care of it in the future. Junyi then learned that Feng Qing was actually immune to all poisons. If he hadn't rashly sucked out the poison earlier, he wouldn't have been busy for half the day now. However, there was one question Feng Qing couldn't figure out no matter how long he thought about it. Why would Junyi suddenly give him a gift? This question embarrassed Junyi. His mind went blank at that moment. Just as he was troubled about not having come up with an explanation, Feng Qing rubbed his hands and said that to speed up the treatment of the leg ailment, he needed to continue bribing him. He used this to make even more outrageous demands. For example, give this for one acupuncture session, give that for one massage. If he felt bored during the treatment, he could even introduce some girls from the brothel. This made Junyi's face darken with annoyance. This Feng Qing really seemed to be addicted to teasing him. If he weren't paralyzed now, he'd really want to pry open this person's head and see what's inside. Watching Junyi leave angrily, Feng Qing was bewildered. He didn't think he had said anything wrong. This woman dressed as a man always inexplicably teases the male lead, and almost lost her first kiss in the end. Junyi, unable to bear Feng Qing's teasing anymore, could only leave in anger. Unexpectedly, just as he reached the doorway, his wheels got caught on the threshold. Both Feng Qing and Junyi were startled. Feng Qing had no choice but to use himself as a cushion. Their eyes met. Junyi was fuming. This position, this gaze. Get the hell off me. He didn't want to have that indescribable relationship with a gay man. This request delighted Feng Qing. He was pressed down so firmly. How could he roll away? Junyi had no choice but to try to push himself up. But after a short while, his arms lost strength. The next second, they almost kissed. This scared Feng Qing. He almost lost his first kiss of 82 years. This time he didn't care about anger. He directly pushed Junyi off. The scene just now was too dangerous. He hadn't recovered for a long time. Then he tremblingly helped Junyi up. Actually, it wasn't his fault. Wasn't it to save him? Otherwise, if he had hit the ground just now, he might have lost his front teeth. At this moment, a servant came over. It was time for Junyi's bath. When Feng Qing heard this, he was delighted. Since the prince had a leg injury and couldn't move conveniently, he had to do it for him. Although this guy's temper wasn't great, he had to admit that his body was very impressive. In short, it perfectly matched Feng Qing's aesthetic standards. However, at this moment, a head suddenly popped out. Sorry, I didn't see anything. Lu Rushi didn't understand why he always stumbled upon such indescribable scenes. He guiltily put down the things and ran out. But because he was in such a hurry, he hit the door panel. Now there were only 2 people left in the room. Looking at Feng Qing like this, Junyi didn't know why he felt uneasy. Feng Qing recalled the events of today. It seemed he hadn't suffered any loss. Forget it, he wouldn't hold it against him. On their way back, Junyi suddenly felt something strange around. The next second, Feng Qing was pulled into Junyi's arms. Looking at the man in black before him, Junyi coldly asked, "Who are you?" The man in black didn't mince words, saying he was here to find the divine doctor. Feng Qing sensed trouble. There's no divine doctor here, only the prince and his male concubine. Hearing this response, Junyi was stunned. This brat really dared to say anything. Damn it, he didn't like men. The man in black wasn't interested in listening to his nonsense. He charged forward with his sword. Feng Qing thought he was doomed this time. The next second, Junyi blocked the attack for him. Watching up close, he found Junyi even more handsome. After several rounds, the man in black was forced to retreat repeatedly by Junyi. As expected of the war prince, even sitting in a wheelchair, he was still so formidable. But Feng Qing didn't understand why the man in black wanted to kill him. He didn't seem to have offended anyone recently. The man in black didn't seem to want to give up this opportunity. He attacked Feng Qing again. To protect Feng Qing from harm, Junyi suddenly pushed him away. Junyi was already poisoned and couldn't walk. If the man in black wanted to fight with him, it was only a matter of time. He had to find a way to help him. At this moment, Feng Qing seemed to have an idea. Then he produced a bamboo tube from somewhere and blew out a poisonous gas. The man in black immediately lost control of his body and started dancing this year's most popular square dance. While the man in black was out of control, Feng Qing took out a stick and knocked him unconscious. This woman dressed as a man not only gained the male lead's trust, but also received a free brothel. Are you envious? Junyi inhaled the poison powder and suddenly started dancing square dance too. This scene was too funny. Feng Qing couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then he gave the antidote to Junyi. After taking the antidote, Junyi looked at Feng Qing and slowly said, "Feng Qing, if you're willing to be a male concubine, you'd definitely be the most popular in the court." Feng Qing was stunned at first. Then he put his arm around Junyi's neck. "This joke isn't funny at all, okay? I never thought the mighty war prince would have such a humorous side." Junyi was so startled by Feng Qing's excitement that he almost coughed up blood. Was this attempted murder? Feng Qing didn't expect Junyi to be so fragile, coughing up blood at the slightest provocation. It was really frustrating. He wondered if they could make it back in time to stop the bleeding. Earlier outside, Junyi had fought with the man in black to save him and had already suffered internal injuries. He didn't know if it was worth it. However, Feng Qing was quite touched. Others might think Junyi saved him for his leg condition. Unexpectedly, the next second, Junyi inexplicably said, "I like you very much." This made Feng Qing very uncomfortable. Although he usually didn't speak seriously, his sexual orientation was very normal. Just then, a servant suddenly came to report that they had found a royal token on the man in black. He didn't expect the palace's reach to be so long, daring to harm his people. Then Junyi called for Feng Qing, asking him to accompany him back to the imperial city. Isn't it too sudden, this late at night? He originally thought Junyi would leave with Feng Qing. Unexpectedly, after going out, he told Feng Qing to go home first and would send 2 guards to protect his safety. Go home? No way. Having finally regained his freedom, of course he was going to the brothel. Holding a wine cup, Feng Qing heard from the beauties here that a newcomer had arrived at the brothel. He became interested. Then Feng Qing came downstairs and looked around. Soon, a girl slowly approached, surrounded by a group of people. Most people were moved to tears after seeing the woman's true face. Where did this little fairy come from? Looking at the woman on stage, Feng Qing felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. This woman was called Lin Shui. It was her first time at the brothel, and she was now being auctioned by the owner. At this moment, Feng Qing was shocked. He seemed to remember something and said, hitting the board, that Lin Shui was his sister. How dare they auction off the second young lady of the general's mansion? They must have a death wish. Lin Shui was born naive and must have been tricked by these people. Hearing Feng Qing say this, the owner became a bit nervous. But everyone knew the general's mansion only had one son, Feng Qing. Where did a daughter come from? He was about to take Lin Shui away. The owner wouldn't have it. Lin Shui was now his cash cow. How could he let her go so easily? The brothel owner brought a group of people to subdue Feng Qing. Unexpectedly, Junyi suddenly appeared to save the day. Seeing his big shot arrive, Feng Qing couldn't be happier. Then Feng Qing seized the opportunity, asking Junyi to support him. And the best way to support was to give him this brothel. To win over Junyi, he could teach him a set of massage techniques that not only promote blood circulation, but also improve leg problems. Before Feng Qing could finish, Junyi held his hand and agreed. The brothel owner was stunned. This was the place he had run for over a decade. Wasn't this taking his life? No matter how he pleaded, all that awaited him was being thrown out. This is absolutely the most popular woman I've ever seen. She dresses as a man, makes the prince willingly become gay, and even becomes the behind-the-scenes boss of a brothel. Do you like such a woman? After resolving Lin Shui's matter, Feng Qing was about to change clothes. However, at this moment, Junyi suddenly appeared. Feng Qing couldn't understand why the mighty war prince liked to enter other people's rooms so much. But even so, it's not okay. He was only halfway through changing his clothes, so he definitely couldn't let Junyi come in. Junyi didn't understand. They were both men. What was there to be afraid of? Feng Qing retorted irritably, I mind that you're gay. In response to this, Junyi didn't deny it. Even if he was gay, he wouldn't be interested in just anyone. Then Junyi asked Feng Qing if he liked that woman called Lin Shui very much. Feng Qing was shocked. Was this guy trying to compete with him for her? Then Junyi said, I heard you even helped her bathe today and took great care of her. Feng Qing was confused. So what? This guy couldn't be jealous of this too, could he? The next second, Junyi's eyes turned exceptionally cold. What if I want her? Feng Qing was speechless. This seemingly gay prince actually couldn't resist Lin Shui's charm either. From Lin Shui, Feng Qing had learned that Lin Shui's mother had some connection with his birth mother, so he would definitely take good care of her. He couldn't just hand her over to Junyi like this. Junyi was acting strange today. He warned her that before he cured her legs, she couldn't think about anything else. She could only focus on taking care of him wholeheartedly. He also declared she wasn't allowed to set her mind on anyone else. This made Feng Qing furious. Who did he think he was? She couldn't be nice to anyone but him? He really was treating her like a male concubine. Just then, Feng Qing suddenly saw a shadow flash by. That direction was Lin Shui's room. What was that person trying to do? At this moment, Lin Shui was sound asleep, completely unaware that danger was quietly approaching. The person tiptoed into the room, wanted to take advantage of Lin Shui. Unexpectedly, they suddenly smelled a strange fragrance. What kind of scent was this? It was so intoxicating. The next second, Feng Qing burst through the door. The person in black wanted to fight back, but suddenly realized they had been drugged. To avoid being discovered, they chose to escape through the window. Feng Qing watched the shadowy figure, but didn't chase after them. His soul-losing fragrance wasn't something an ordinary person could withstand. With Lin Shui's beauty that could make people cry, who knows how many more peepers would come in the future. He had to be more careful. The next day, as the new boss of the brothel, Feng Qing felt it necessary to hold a small meeting with his employees. Today was his first day taking over the brothel. Whether to stay or leave was up to everyone's own decision. Halfway through the meeting, Feng Qing glimpsed Junyi in a corner not far away. But Feng Qing had no intention of acknowledging him. He hadn't forgotten those selfish words Junyi had said to him yesterday. Watching Junyi eat a pastry, Lu Rushi couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time she had seen someone who could handle Junyi. The meeting was in full swing. Some people wanted to leave, some wanted to stay. For those leaving, Feng Qing had people give them some silver. As for those staying, naturally, they were to serve him well and handle the brothel's affairs. In the future, they just needed to wait to collect money. This is absolutely the most narcissistic woman I've ever seen. Not only does she dress as a man, after turning the male lead gay, she's still feeling smug about it. If it were you, would you do this? Junyi was ignored when Feng Qing held the small meeting. After going out, he specifically intercepted him outside the door. In Junyi's words, Feng Qing had used him and then tossed him aside. That little brat. Seeing Junyi like this, Feng Qing couldn't help but feel a bit guilty. Even though Jun Yi was sitting in a wheelchair, as the war prince, his aura was no less than anyone else's. This made him involuntarily sober up. Unfortunately, the unlucky Feng Qing's foot just happened to catch on the doorstep. The next second, Feng Qing's whole body fell backward. Jun Yi wanted to grab him, but his little strength wasn't enough. He fell down with Feng Qing, their eyes meeting again. This time, Jun Yi noticed that Feng Qing's eyelashes were exceptionally long, even prettier than a woman's. Those gentle, watery eyes. Feng Qing boldly thought, could it be that the mighty war prince was really gay and had fallen for him? No way, it couldn't be. Although he admitted he was quite good-looking, it shouldn't be enough to turn the prince gay. But he had to admit, the prince's skin was really good, so soft and bouncy that he wasn't entirely opposed to it. Hearing the words that occasionally popped out of Feng Qing's mouth, Jun Yi felt it was too embarrassing. If he was gay, he was gay. Why did he have to say it out loud? The next second, Feng Qing told Jun Yi to shut up again. He hadn't had enough of being narcissistic yet. After all, young women like him with both talent and looks were very rare. Jun Yi couldn't take it anymore and pinched Feng Qing's chin. This brat really dared to say anything. This scene in Feng Qing's eyes was incredible. Was the prince going to kiss him? Jun Yi let go of Feng Qing's hand. He finally understood what it meant to be a stubborn brat. He even threatened to tell his father about this. Feng Qing thought this was not good. In that case, it would be better to just kiss him directly. He wasn't afraid of anything except his father. Then hurry up and help this prince up, Jun Yi said coldly. Actually, Feng Qing knew Jun Yi was just tough on the outside but soft on the inside. Seeing that Jun Yi wasn't angry, he took the opportunity to say, Your Highness, Lin Shui, whom I saved yesterday, is so beautiful that many men are peeping at her beauty. If your highness is willing to send people to protect Lin Shui, I will definitely speed up the process of treating your legs. I'll strive to get you off the wheelchair in 7 days, off crutches in half a month, and fully recovered in a month. Hearing this, Jun Yi was a bit confused, but he understood the general idea. It meant his legs could heal quickly. Feng Qing heard there was hope. It seemed the prince was indeed, as he said, sharp tongue, but soft heart. Their prince was indeed the best. This man was Jun Ye's royal brother, also the current emperor. For Jun Ye's happiness, Jun He was truly worried sick. His brother was good in every way, but he just didn't have a girlfriend. Heaven knows he already had several children. He was really anxious. He even heard rumors that Jun Yi was gay. What he cared about now was whether those rumors were true or not. Jun Yi replied helplessly that he wasn't gay. Hearing Jun Yi say this, Jun Yi happily said, Since you're not gay and haven't found a girl you like, your marriage matters can only be left to your brother to worry about. Next month, I'll announce to the world to select a bride for you. Jun Yi told Feng Qing this news, which delighted Feng Qing. He immediately asked Jun Yi what kind of girl he liked, saying he knew many women. But in his opinion, those delicate, breathtakingly beautiful girls who sway like willows in the wind don't match Jun Ye's temperament at all. Jun Yi retorted, You just want me to stay away from your Lin Shui, don't you? Feng Qing, whose intentions were exposed, laughed awkwardly. He indeed didn't need a fragile princess. If Feng Qing were a woman, he might consider it. Wow, someone could actually like him? But that wouldn't do. He had too many bad habits. He couldn't do laundry or cook, didn't like bathing, and indulged in eating, drinking, visiting brothels, and gambling. Such a person was no good. Jun Yi got angry when he heard this. What did he mean by that? His evasion surely meant he looked down on him. This was now a hurdle. Actually, he couldn't be blamed, could he? Who told him to be so accurate earlier, making him feel instantly guilty? Speaking of this, Jun Yi remembered that Feng Qing had promised to fully heal his legs within a month. He felt it was necessary to start implementing this promise. On his way home, after giving Jun Yi acupuncture, Feng Qing saw a sweet-looking woman kneeling on the street, selling herself to bury her father. Feng Qing approached, thinking this only happened in legends, but it was actually real. Just then, the woman suddenly hugged Feng Qing, which startled him. What was going on? The woman cried pitifully, hoping Feng Qing would buy her. She was willing to work like an ox or horse to repay his kindness. He thought such scenes only happen on TV, but it was happening to him. Moreover, his reputation wasn't good. Was this woman's brain kicked by a donkey? The next second, the woman on the ground suddenly grabbed Feng Qing's hand and moved it towards her chest. This scared Feng Qing quite a bit. Were women nowadays all so bold? However, this scene appeared different in others' eyes. They had seen people harassing women before, but it was the first time they saw someone like Feng Qing so blatantly taking advantage of someone. The man's words angered Feng Qing. Was this person blind? It was clearly that woman who threw herself at him. How did it become him taking advantage of her? His brothel was full of beautiful fairy-like women. He had seen all kinds of beauties. He wouldn't need to take advantage of a stranger in public. The female lead disguises as a man and is framed into marrying a rich beauty. If it were you, what would you do? On his way home, Feng Qing encountered a rumored event of someone selling themselves to bury their father. However, this woman was too unkempt, completely not to his taste, and he had a feeling of being set up. This wouldn't do. To uncover the truth, Feng Qing decided to show the woman before him what true professionalism was. He lifted the cloth covering the man's head, revealing a mischievous smile. The next second, he stepped on the man's body. The man immediately burst into tears from Feng Qing's actions. He never thought Feng Qing would see through the scam at a glance. That kick was really painful. The man who had previously accused Feng Qing of being a pervert also came forward to apologize. However, after Feng Qing left, that man once again showed an expression of disbelief. It seemed this person wouldn't be easy to deal with. Feng Qing wasn't stupid either. He knew this scam was specifically targeted at him, aiming to plant someone by his side. Seeing no opportunity, they even wanted to get him imprisoned. Who was going to such lengths to deal with him? Just as Feng Qing returned home, he received an invitation from the Bai family. The Bai family and Feng family had never been on good terms, yet they sent him an invitation. It must be some kind of trick. However, such an interesting event made him want to go and see, and also bring Lin Shui along to broaden her horizons. 3 days later, as soon as Feng Qing took Lin Shui out, they attracted a crowd of people on horseback. Most of them were captivated by Lin Shui's beauty. Feng Qing, annoyed, gave these people a kick and warned them to mind their eyes. At this moment, a cute little girl approached. She called Feng Qing cousin upon seeing him. This person really had a sweet mouth. She immediately complimented Lin Shui's beauty and offered to take her out to play. Lin Shui agreed without hesitation. After all, she didn't like being around a bunch of men either. Feng Qing naturally had no objections to this. It was better than Lin Shui being ogled by a group of men with lecherous gazes. Moreover, his cousin was someone he trusted, so he felt at ease with Lin Shui going with her. The man beside him kept praising Feng Qing's good looks. To be honest, Feng Qing was very confident about his appearance. He was not only handsome, but also wealthy. This answer obviously hurt the heart of the man next to him. The response was too blunt. He felt so embarrassed. Just then, a servant came to tell him that his cousin and Lin Shui were in trouble in the backyard and asked him to go check immediately. This was serious. Feng Qing followed the person without a word, asking him about the situation as they walked. But the person's words were always hesitant and unclear. This made Feng Qing suddenly feel that something was off. The person pointed to a room and told Feng Qing that Lin Shui and his cousin were inside. But Feng Qing wasn't stupid, and he seemed to faintly smell something strange. He wanted to see what these people were up to. As soon as he entered the room, Feng Qing smelled a strong aphrodisiac. Feng Qing immediately took out an antidote. He walked to the window and looked at the sleeping person. He guessed that the person earlier had led him here to make something indescribable happen between them. Just then, the door was violently pushed open. The person who came and saw Feng Qing and started cursing him for ruining her daughter's innocence. Feng Qing wanted to explain, but the woman directly told him not to explain and to take responsibility instead. Feng Qing was stunned. He hadn't done anything. How could he take responsibility? The woman slowly opened her mouth. Choose an auspicious date to marry my daughter. The female lead disguises as a man, is framed and forced to marry a rich beauty, and it's a buy one get one free deal. Feng Qing wouldn't admit it. He clearly hadn't done anything. Why should he marry her daughter? The woman was about to say something more, but she was pulled back by her clothes. The girl slowly said, "Mother, don't force Feng Lang. Sister, we don't seem to know each other well. Why are you calling me so disgustingly?" But Bai Yu was crying her eyes out, saying she would marry no one but him. This whole situation seemed unreasonable. What normal woman would insist on marrying a playboy like him? Bai Yu didn't care. In front of everyone, she still expressed her love for Feng Qing, claiming he was the best man in the world. These words almost made Feng Qing vomit. This woman's acting skills were wasted if she didn't become an actress. Even he couldn't say such disgusting things. To be honest, with his looks, there was nothing about her that he found attractive. Besides, he didn't like women. The vicious mother and daughter pair once again put on a show of sorrow, reiterating that he and Feng Qing were in love. Looking at this mother-daughter pair, Feng Qing was utterly speechless. They were such good actors, constantly saying she would marry no one but him. Just then, Junyi walked in. He didn't expect this brat to get into such trouble after not seeing him for a few days. Although he had no interest in this woman, his charm was still so great. Who knows when this woman fell for him? Besides, someone like Bai Yu, who was so ugly, he wouldn't be interested in. Hearing Feng Qing's words, the woman's acting skills soared again, with tears falling freely. This meant he didn't want her, right? Even so, would he not want a child in her belly? Feng Qing was stunned, as if struck by lightning. She was a woman. She had no ability to make someone pregnant, okay? These days there were still such scammers. Bai Yu kept saying, "Our child," but Feng Qing remained unmoved, just quietly watching her performance. Seeing the woman shamelessly slandering him, Feng Qing also lost his temper. If she wanted to say the child was his, fine, but she should at least say where, when, and in what position they conceived the child. Bai Yu was at a loss for words, not expecting Feng Qing to ask such an unreasonable question. But at this point, she had to make everyone believe. She didn't believe Feng Qing would stop her in front of everyone. To Bai Yu's surprise, Feng Qing really didn't see her coming, and she hit her forehead, causing a big bump. Feng Qing was disgusted watching this mother-daughter pair make a scene. Luckily, the famous Dr. Lu Rushi was here today. He could have her check if this woman was really pregnant. Subsequently, Lu Rushi did indeed check Bai Yu's pulse. However, from the pulse, it seemed Bai Yu was already over a month pregnant. At this point, Bai Yu still wanted Junyi to stand up for her, firmly stating that it was the result of her passionate encounter with Feng Qing a month and a half ago. However, in the next second, Junyi ordered people to arrest her. Bai Yu was shocked and didn't understand why. A month and a half ago, Feng Qing was with him in the suburban house. How could he have been thousands of miles away with her? This woman was clearly challenging his intelligence. Bai Yu knew she was in big trouble. With Junyi testifying for Feng Qing, she had no room to argue. At this moment, Bai Yu's father suddenly appeared and started begging for mercy. Feng Qing finally understood. This guy hadn't shown up for so long, and now he came out to play the emotional card. Did they think he was a 3-year-old child? Since that's the case, let this father-daughter duo be punished together. This woman was too strange. Not only did she dress as a man, but she also got engaged to a woman. If it were you, would you do this? Feng Qing was framed by the Bai family, but in the end, he gave the Bai family women a good lesson. If he told his father about this, he would surely be very happy. Speak of the devil, Feng Lin appeared out of nowhere. Before Feng Qing could speak, Feng Lin pointed at him and told him to go back and get married. What's going on? This was too unexpected. As soon as he returned, Feng Qing dejectedly told Lin Shui the news. Lin Shui burst into tears upon hearing it. Their Qing was so good, yet he had someone outside. Most importantly, wasn't Feng Qing a woman? Could women marry wives? Don't scare her, okay? Seeing Lin Shui's shock, Feng Qing quickly covered her mouth. If others found out he was a man, it would be over. Wait, he hadn't told Lin Shui he was a woman, had he? To think he usually charmed thousands of girls. Yet Lin Shui saw through his female identity at a glance. Lin Shui pinched Feng Qing's cheeks. Her Feng Qing was so beautiful. How could he possibly be a man? Now Feng Qing was embarrassed. He didn't expect the usually gentle and reserved girl to be so smart. But Feng Ling seemed determined to have Feng Qing marry this time. Otherwise, he might be kicked out of the family. Suddenly, Feng Qing thought of an idea. Why not marry Lin Shui? After all, Lin Shui knew his identity. This way, Feng Ling wouldn't force him anymore. Feng Qing's proposal immediately gained Lin Shui's approval. She wasn't interested in men anyway, and if she married Feng Qing, the two sisters could play together every day. After discussing the matter, they quickly entered the engagement phase. Feng Lin was quite satisfied with Feng Qing's performance, even starting to fantasize about holding a grandchild soon. However, at this moment, Feng Qing inexplicably felt a strong, killing intent from behind. Looking back, it was Junyi drinking alone. What was this guy up to? By nightfall, Feng Qing was completely drunk, feeling like there were bugs in front of him as he walked. He didn't even notice when something tripped him. Fortunately, he happened to run into Junyi. Feng Qing was now completely irrational, not knowing which blind thing dared to hug him. Opening his eyes, he saw it was a handsome guy, so handsome it hurt his eyes. To Feng Qing's surprise, Junyi actually asked him why he got engaged to Lin Shui. What kind of question was that? Lin Shui was so beautiful. Who else would he marry if not her? Although the prince was also good-looking, he preferred women. At this moment, Junyi, not knowing what he was thinking, strangely asked if Feng Qing would like him if he were a woman. Perhaps this was the after-effect of Duan Xiao. He was very troubled now. His feelings for Feng Qing. He clearly felt he wasn't Duan Xiao, yet he liked Feng Qing as a man. Suddenly, Feng Qing inexplicably hiccuped 9 times. It directly choked Junyi, while the person responsible acted as if nothing happened, swaying as he prepared to go to sleep. With the atmosphere at this point, how could Junyi give up? He also wanted to go to sleep, and he wanted to sleep with Feng Qing. Feng Qing was completely confused by Junye's actions. Plus, Junye's series of flirtatious actions in front of him, acting cute and pitiful. Feng Qing had no choice but to bundle Junyi up and carry him back to his own room. This woman likes to hold a mushroom while sleeping. Have you ever seen such a bizarre sleeping habit? Junyi felt a bit confused when he woke up. Could someone tell him what was going on? How did his little mushroom end up in someone else's hands? It wasn't just Junyi. Feng Qing also felt like he was dying. What on earth had he done? He actually slept with someone else's little mushroom all night. Then Junyi belatedly realized, last night, did they really do something indescribable? If that's the case, Feng Qing must take responsibility for him. There's no time like the present. It would be best to marry him today. Feng Qing was clearly frightened by this statement. He was a man now. Moreover, if Junyi remembered correctly, last night it was Feng Qing who carried him back to the room. So he must take responsibility. This amused Feng Qing. If everyone knew that the dignified prince was Duan Xiao, their expressions would surely be priceless. Besides, if he remembered correctly, he had just touched the prince's left chest. For fairness, shouldn't the prince touch him too? Junyi was completely helpless against Feng Qing's roguish behavior. After a heated discussion, Junyi decided that if Feng Qing returned to the prince's mansion with him now to treat his leg ailment, he wouldn't pursue the matter of being slept with yesterday. Although Feng Qing knew this was blackmail, he had no choice but to agree. If this matter really reached his father, he wouldn't have it easy either. Feng Qing looked around. He had to admit, although Junye's character wasn't great, his arrangements were not bad. Just when Feng Qing thought he could finally rest well after a long day, Junyi pushed open the door from outside again. Noticing Junyi, Feng Qing was startled. This dog of a man? Why did he like to enter his room so quietly? Feng Qing could only wrap himself tightly in the blanket, carefully covering himself, afraid that this dog of a man would discover his true identity. Obviously, Junyi didn't understand Feng Qing's strange behavior and asked what he was doing. Feng Qing had never seen such a difficult man. He was the one who barged into his room, yet somehow it ended up feeling like Feng Qing had done something wrong. According to Junye's explanation, he felt his condition might have worsened, and his foot started to hurt. Feng Qing couldn't help but want to blame Lu Rushi, that quack doctor. Usually, he was responsible for taking care of Junyi inseparably. Not only could she not cure his leg, but she couldn't even take care of him properly. Junyi was stunned. His leg condition had suddenly worsened, yet Feng Qing was so fierce. But he was showing concern for him after all. He then apologized to Feng Qing, saying it might have been due to catching a cold carelessly. Feng Qing thought he was hearing things. The mighty war prince actually apologizing to him? How rare. Then, Junye's words completely shattered Feng Qing's worldview. He slowly said, "So, Feng Qing, it's better if you personally take care of my body from now on." He knew things weren't that simple. Wasn't this emotional blackmail? This man got his period while sleeping. When he realized it, it was already too late. The bedsheet was clearly stained. Just then, Junyi walked in. Feng Qing hurriedly covered himself with the blanket in fright. But obviously, his movement didn't escape Junye's eyes. He still caught sight of that red stain on the bedsheet. Feng Qing thought, it's over. There's no way to explain this. Who knew that this month's period would come early? He wasn't prepared at all. Seeing this, Junyi quickly asked where he was injured and why he was bleeding. Hearing Junye's words, Feng Qing heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't think about gender. He then casually made up an excuse, saying he had tripped and it wasn't a big deal. No need to worry. But Junyi obviously didn't believe it. How could a fall cause so much bleeding? He insisted on calling Lu Rushi to bandage Feng Qing. Feng Qing was shocked. This guy still wanted to call someone to bandage him. That definitely wouldn't do. Besides, his medical skills were much better than Lu Rushi's. He didn't need anyone. He could handle it himself. Junyi was dumbfounded. What was this brat doing? Why was he angry? He was just concerned about Feng Qing's condition. Finally, at Feng Qing's insistence, Junyi could only leave quietly. Although he managed to muddle through this time, if he got caught again next time, he wouldn't be so lucky. So it was better to leave quickly. Said and done, Feng Qing quickly packed his things, preparing to sneak away quietly. To his dismay, before he could even get out of the prince's mansion's main gate, he was caught and brought back in. Just then, a servant hurriedly reported that a beggar had delivered a letter. Feng Qing was shocked. Beggars these days could even write letters? Indeed, beggars weren't scary. What's scary was educated beggars. Just as he was about to take the envelope, Junyi snatched it away. Junyi briefly looked at it. The gist was that someone particularly missed Feng Qing, to the point where a day apart felt like 3 autumns. Junyi couldn't believe it. With his looks, how could this Feng Qing guy be more popular than him? It simply defied logic. Moreover, the letter mentioned that since that night when Feng Qing did that thing to that person, they couldn't stop thinking about Feng Qing. Junyi was furious when he saw this. He didn't expect Feng Qing to be such a player. At this point, Junyi could no longer tolerate Feng Qing and demanded to know what exactly he had done to that man. Feng Qing felt wronged hearing this. Everyone in the capital knew he only loved women. How could he possibly have a relationship with another man? If he really liked men, he could just look in the mirror every day. Was there a more handsome man in the world than him? That being said, what was this letter all about? Feng Qing calmly explained. One night, he caught a man sneaking into Lin Shui's room. The man was scared off while escaping. Now he must be asking for an antidote. This woman fell into the water while disguised as a man. In the end, she even received CPR in front of passersby. If it were you, what would you do? Today, his younger cousin and fiancé had both invited Feng Qing to go boating on the lake. To avoid being completely ignored, Junyi also brought Lu Rushi along to join the fun. Compared to looking at Junyi's poker face every day, he naturally preferred the soft and cute girls. Seeing this, Junyi was visibly upset. The younger cousin, Jiao Jiao, was a lively and cheerful girl. Seeing the boats, she wanted to invite Feng Qing to play in the middle of the lake. Feng Qing looked at Junyi, asking if he wanted to join them. Unexpectedly, Junyi remained silent, acting aloof. In the end, Lu Rushi, unable to bear the awkward situation, stepped in to smooth things over. With the boatman's call, the 3 quickly boarded the boat. At this moment, the 3 were looking ahead, completely unaware of the boatman's intentions. Behind them, out of sight, he revealed a sinister smile. The next second, Feng Qing was pushed forward by him. Jiao Jiao and Lin Shui were both startled by this sudden turn of events. Immediately, Feng Qing fell into the water, and he could feel someone constantly pulling his feet, dragging him down. He didn't know who was trying to harm him. Just when he thought he was done for, he saw Junyi swimming towards him with all his might. Seeing that Feng Qing was already exhausted, Junyi didn't care about anything else and swam over to give him artificial respiration. After rescuing him to shore, he gave him several rounds of CPR. When Feng Qing woke up, the first thing he did was push Junyi away. After all, in others' eyes, they were both grown men. How could they do such a thing? Jiao Jiao also came over, saying how careless Feng Qing was to fall off a boat. However, only Feng Qing knew he had been pushed. Lin Shui also realized it belatedly. The boatman who was here earlier had disappeared by the time Feng Qing woke up. Feng Qing made a mental note of this. Originally, Jiao Jiao wasn't too worried about the fall, as she believed Feng Qing could swim. But who could have imagined it was a carefully planned, dangerous situation? At the time, his legs were held underwater. Otherwise, with his skills, how could he need someone else to save him, let alone give someone the chance to perform CPR on him? However, this incident wasn't entirely fruitless. During their brief struggle underwater, he managed to get a jade pendant from the person who had held him. Seeing this, Junyi unhesitatingly asked Feng Qing to hand over the jade pendant. With his connections, it wouldn't take long to trace the owner of the pendant. But something was off. Feng Qing suddenly looked towards Junyi. At this moment, Junyi was also very nervous, standing there not knowing where to look. Feng Qing was surprised to find that Junyi's leg had healed. Junyi, knowing he was at fault, couldn't look Feng Qing in the eye. He said that maybe he was so anxious when he saw him fall into the water that it suddenly healed. With Feng Qing's years of medical experience from his previous life, he could tell at a glance that Junyi was lying. So the only possibility was that Junyi's leg condition had healed long ago. Faced with Feng Qing's analysis and questioning, Junyi was not only nervous but didn't know how to answer. This made Feng Qing even more furious. His leg had already healed, yet he still kept him confined in the werewolf. Was he treating him like a toy? Junyi hadn't anticipated things would become so serious. He wanted to explain, but he couldn't bring himself to say things like wanting to keep Feng Qing by his side. Feng Qing angrily turned to leave. He had never met someone so frustrating. This man was now in a daze. It turned out that when Junyi rescued Feng Qing earlier, he had accidentally touched Feng Qing's chest. He stared blankly at his hand. He couldn't understand why Feng Qing's chest muscles were so soft. The next day, Junyi went directly to the Feng residence. Feng Qing didn't care about Junyi's status and still maintained a sour face. Junyi didn't know why he felt a bit guilty. He came to see Feng Qing for a reason, but with Feng Qing's attitude, it seemed it would be difficult to handle. He immediately opened a box. Feng Qing loved these precious flowers and plants the most, and the Tianxing grass before him was truly invaluable. He was drooling at the sight of it, but then he remembered how Junyi had deceived him. His leg had already healed, yet he kept him confined in the War Prince's mansion without freedom. Just thinking about it made him angry. He wouldn't be bought off with a single plant. Hearing this, Junyi shook his head in feigned disappointment. Then he revealed boxes full of medicinal herbs. Yes, he did this on purpose. Feng Qing admitted he was tempted, extremely tempted. But he also knew this must be Junyi's trap. However, when Junyi said he was going to leave with the items, Feng Qing finally gave in. He tearfully hugged the pile of herbs. Even if it was a trap, he'd jump right in. After all, he had coveted these things for a long time. But don't think that just because he accepted these things, he'd forgive Junyi for deceiving him, unless he did him another favor. Then, he handed Junyi the jade pendant he got when he fell into the river that day. He wanted to know who was trying to harm him. Junyi was very quick. The next day, he had already obtained clues about the jade pendant. They went together to the jade shop to question the owner's wife. Unexpectedly, the owner's wife was uncooperative. Even though Feng Qing had displayed his personal charm, he still couldn't win her over. In the end, it was Junyi who used his superpower and successfully opened the owner's wife's heart. She voluntarily offered to take them to the home of the jade pendant's owner. Strangely, no matter how much they knocked, there was no response from inside the house. Feng Qing suddenly had a bad feeling and pushed the door open. When they entered, they all thought the woman inside was sleeping, so they tried to wake her up. But as they shook her, they realized something was wrong. The woman fell to the ground, and it was clear she was already dead. The jade shop owner's wife was terrified and turned pale. She ran away without a second thought, leaving only Junyi and Feng Qing behind. At this moment, Feng Qing noticed a hat nearby. He put the hat on the woman's head. Feng Qing's mind flashed back to the boatman's appearance that day. It was exactly the same. He understood everything now. The dead woman before him was the boatman who had pushed him into the water that day. At the same time, he also guessed that all this must have been orchestrated by another mastermind. Just when they were about to find the person who harmed him, the trail went cold again. Who exactly wanted to harm him? However, at this moment, Junyi stepped forward and said that perhaps these people's target was him from the beginning. As a prince, he had many enemies in the official circles. Feng Qing was just dragged into it because of him. But since things had developed to this point, Feng Qing couldn't solve it on his own. As long as Junyi promised to compensate him generously in the future with all kinds of precious herbs, it would be fine. However, before Feng Qing could be happy for too long, he suddenly realized something was wrong. If the mastermind knew they would find out, wouldn't they be in danger? Sure enough, the next second, a group of black-clad men with long swords rushed in. If you were discovered disguising as a man, what would you do? Being chased by a group of black-clad assassins in the middle of the night, Junyi sensed danger. He wanted to call for his hidden guards to help, but his hidden guards had already been taken out by these people. These fierce-looking men charged at Junyi with their swords. Junyi had no weapon on him and could only fight with his feet. After a few rounds, Junyi was already at a disadvantage. They say the War Prince's martial arts are formidable, but these opponents were numerous and all skilled. Feng Qing decided they couldn't confront these people head-on. A wisp of smoke then appeared from his hand. These people weren't fools. Knowing it was a sleeping agent, they quickly covered their mouths. But even so, the opponents still had the advantage in numbers. At this moment, Feng Qing didn't know there was danger behind him. By the time he realized, it was already too late. A sharp pain came from his chest. Junyi quickly caught him from behind. This time he had been careless. Seeing Feng Qing in unbearable pain, the most urgent task was to take him back first. At this time, the black-clad men behind them had been completely knocked out by the sleeping agent. Junyi wanted to take the unconscious Feng Qing back, but seeing him bleeding so much, he thought it would be better to stop the bleeding first. So he unbuttoned her clothes. He was shocked by what he saw. He never expected Feng Qing to be a woman. Early the next morning, as soon as Feng Qing opened her eyes, she saw this unhealthy scene. Junyi calmly approached Feng Qing. He showed no signs of guilt at all. This terrified Feng Qing. She was supposed to be a man. Didn't this guy just say a few days ago that he wasn't interested in men? The next second, Junyi calmly reached over Feng Qing to grab a bottle of medicine from the bedside table. Feng Qing was speechless. This guy must be doing this on purpose. Then he once again displayed his perfect six-pack abs and flawless physique in front of Feng Qing. He then looked at Feng Qing and coldly said, "I already know your identity." Feng Qing was stunned by Jun Ye's words, then looked down at herself. Feng Qing suddenly felt like her head was struck by lightning. Had he seen everything? What exactly did this guy do to her last night? However, Junyi explained that he had only treated her wound briefly. Although he said this, Feng Qing was still uncertain. After all, she had been unconscious. At this moment, a glint flashed in Jun Ye's eyes. He then asked Feng Qing, "You're a woman, right?" Although he already knew the answer, he wanted to hear it from Feng Qing's own mouth. He just didn't understand. Why would a beautiful woman like Feng Qing disguise herself as a man and wander around outside? Of course, this could also just be Feng Qing's personal interest. Seeing that Feng Qing wouldn't speak, he had no choice. Now that he knew her true identity as a woman, it wouldn't be appropriate to keep her in the prince's mansion. He could only send her back. Yun Ye's attitude surprised Feng Qing. The prince was being too polite today. But just as Junyi was about to leave, he changed his mind. The prince's mansion was large and wealthy. Surely it wouldn't hurt to feed one more mouth. After all, she was injured because of him. Junyi had no choice but to agree, and also promised to help conceal her identity as a woman. However, this meant she now owed him a favor, which would have to be repaid later. If the man you like suddenly had a fiancé, what would you do? Feng Qing was recovering in the war prince's mansion. Unexpectedly, she discovered that women would come to visit Junyi, which surprised her greatly. As soon as the woman saw Feng Qing, she recognized her voice. She even greeted her proactively, saying she knew of Feng Qing's reputation. Then the woman formally introduced herself to Feng Qing, saying she was Jun Ye's fiancée. This woman wasn't as pretty as her, and her words were surprisingly odd. Feng Qing was shocked. That ice-faced man actually had a fiancé? Then, under Feng Qing's surprised gaze, she directly accused Feng Qing of freeloading in the prince's mansion, calling her shameless. Feng Qing was upset now. This woman came to someone else's home for the first time and acted like she owned the place. Who did she think she was? Just then, Junyi appeared from some corner. The woman was as excited as if she'd won the lottery when she saw Junyi. Seeing Feng Qing's sarcastic attitude, Junyi wondered what he had done to offend this woman again. From their conversation, he learned that this woman was called Zhou Ruo. She had come to deliver an invitation to Junyi on her father's behalf. Moreover, Junyi didn't even know Zhou Ruo. She had just been acting like the lady of the house, which Feng Qing found ridiculous. Seeing that Junyi didn't recognize her, Zhou Ruo brought up the Empress Run from the palace as her backing, saying their engagement was arranged when they were children. To Zhou Ruo's surprise, even with this, Junyi still didn't acknowledge any engagement. He said he was too young then, and there was no marriage contract or proof. He thought she must be dreaming if she thought she could control his marriage with just words. Even though Junyi had said this much, Zhou Ruo still wouldn't give up, persistently clinging to Junyi. This made Feng Qing uncomfortable to watch, and she decided to step away for a moment. She didn't like women who behave this way. Seeing Feng Qing about to leave, Junyi panicked and quickly called out to her. Unexpectedly, Zhou Ruo then spoke nonsense in front of Junyi, saying Feng Qing was just a stubborn good-for-nothing, and it would be better to drive him out soon. This statement really angered Junyi. When he was poisoned and his legs were crippled, he didn't see anyone from the Zhou family coming to visit. Now that his legs were healed, they immediately came to leech off him. Did they have no shame? If they didn't know how to behave, they should go back and finish kindergarten first before coming here. Zhou Ruo was furious. She had never been insulted like this before. She wouldn't forget this. At this moment, Junyi was still sulking. Didn't that guy Junyi claim to be the king of hell? How could he still have women coming after him? He felt very unhappy. Junyi was puzzled by Feng Qing's behavior. The two of them were lost in their own thoughts, going back and forth. Finally, Feng Qing couldn't bear it anymore and gave in. But he was still upset. Why didn't this guy go accompany his fiancée instead of coming here? Junyi didn't know what was going on either. He wanted to explain things quickly. It was just a joke he said casually when he was young. Only the Zhou family was so clueless as to take it seriously. Then he asked, "Is Feng Qing jealous?" Hearing this, Feng Qing immediately became furious. What a joke. How could he possibly be jealous? He hated being jealous the most. Junyi didn't believe it. He moved closer and said, "If you're not jealous, why are you angry all by yourself?" This man, while sleeping, ended up embracing someone else. This scene terrified Feng Qing. He remembered that before sleeping, he was alone. When did this guy come to his bed? Feng Qing wanted to push Junyi away. Unexpectedly, he was held even tighter. After pretending to be a man for so long, didn't he know that men are most easily out of control in the morning? Feng Qing was almost dying of anxiety. This guy now knew he was a woman, yet he dared to take advantage of him so blatantly. However, at this moment, he seemed to touch something on someone's body. This became awkward. He didn't mean to. But looking closely, this body was really impressive. Look at these muscles, how good they feel. Feng Qing's blatant behavior directly made Junyi anxious. Just as he was about to reprimand Feng Qing, a duck suddenly rubbed against him from his arms. Then it proudly boasted in front of Junyi, "How's this method of putting out the fire, Your Highness?" As a qualified doctor, he had ways to deal with Junyi's lecherous behavior. Just then, a servant hurriedly came to find Feng Qing. The scene before his eyes directly destroyed his three views. Where was he? What exactly did he see? He then cleverly turned around, pretending to be blind, and said, "Where's young Master Feng? He's not in the room. Let's check the kitchen." At this moment, Feng Qing had a bad feeling. Sure enough, not long after, the news of Feng Qing and Junyi flying planes together at night spread throughout the streets. There were all kinds of versions, but all of them were about how Feng Qing, this stubborn son, was corrupting their war prince. This matter soon reached the imperial palace. The emperor was so angry that he threw the memorial to the ground. Not long ago, Junyi had sworn to him that he had no interest in men. Now he had made a move on Feng Qing, and it became public knowledge. Junyi had no choice. He just like Feng Qing. What could he do? At this time, Junyi hadn't revealed that Feng Qing was a woman. The emperor was at a loss. "You like him, right? Then go explain it to General Feng yourself." Wait, the emperor remembered. Didn't Junyi tell him last time that he had a woman he liked? How come he's now involved with a man? Junyi didn't deny this. He indeed had a woman he liked. Thinking about the Feng family situation, the emperor was troubled. Knowing Feng Ling, he would absolutely not allow his son to share a husband with someone else. So, he could only choose one. At this time, Junyi slowly said, "I choose Qing'er." The emperor heard the name and thought there might be hope. "Who's Qing'er?" Junyi, still expressionless, said, "Qing'er is Feng Qing." The emperor was helpless, holding back tears. It seemed his brother really was interested in men. Not only did the woman dress as a man, but she also made the reputation of being gay known throughout the city. After the incident of Feng Qing and Junyi's relationship, Feng Qing was stopped by Feng Ling as soon as he returned home. Feng Ling felt that Feng Qing and Lin Shui had been engaged for a while, and it was time they should get married. Feng Qing had just taken a sip of water and spat it all out. This news came too suddenly. He wasn't mentally prepared at all. He had initially decided to get engaged to Lin Shui just to appease his father. Even if he really married Lin Shui, two women couldn't possibly give him grandchildren. Feng Ling pointed at Feng Qing and scolded, "Everyone outside is saying you're gay. If you don't get married soon to shut people's mouths, your reputation will be even worse." Now outsiders were saying Lin Shui had been deceived by Feng Qing. Feng Qing realized that his father was worried about Lin Shui. Moreover, a girl as gentle and lovely as Lin Shui was hard to find even with a lantern. It seemed Feng Qing was the one who lucked out. Or was Feng Qing really gay? But thinking again, it didn't make sense. Everyone in the capital knew Feng Qing liked women and frequented brothels. How could he be gay? Just then, a servant suddenly came to report that Junyi had arrived. Now their homosexual affair has shocked the entire capital. He didn't expect Junyi would still have the nerve to come. However, according to the servant, this time it's about the injured soldiers on Junyi's side. Feng Lin didn't say much. just told Feng Qing to help, but not to get too close to Junyi. As soon as they arrived at the military camp, they saw a room full of lying soldiers. Obviously, these people were all poisoned. They needed to expel the toxins first, then bandage the wounds. After half a day of emergency treatment, Feng Qing had pulled all the soldiers back from the brink of death. He was so exhausted that he almost collapsed into Junye's arms and couldn't get up. However, at this moment a soldier came to report. He said that among the injured soldiers this time, only one wasn't poisoned, and that person was mixed in their camp. Just as he was about to reveal that person's name, Feng Qing noticed something unusual about him. When that person took out some powder and was about to sprinkle it towards Junyi, Feng Qing stepped in front of him first. The next second, Feng Qing fainted. The person who poisoned him was temporarily detained. Junyi looked at Feng Qing's symptoms and guessed that he was poisoned with corpse soul. To detoxify, they must use a medicinal bath. Then the problem arose. A medicinal bath requires being completely naked. This is a military camp now. There's no privacy. Junyi was really conflicted. If Feng Qing wakes up and knows he stripped him, would he skin him alive? Then he thought of a perfect solution: to blindfold himself. The effect was excellent. Wow. Not long after, Feng Qing angrily came to confront Junyi. Feng Qing, in a disheveled state, stared at Junyi without blinking. It made Junyi feel very guilty. Then he seemed to think of something and hurriedly explained to Feng Qing that when he stripped him naked earlier, he definitely had his eyes closed. He could swear on it, but Feng Qing wouldn't fall for that. Don't think he would offer himself like other women. That kind of thing doesn't exist for him at all. Junyi was unhappy and quickly stopped Feng Qing. If you don't want to offer yourself, why are you in such a hurry to leave? At this point, Feng Qing didn't know how to face Junyi anymore. He just wanted to escape this awkward situation quickly. Then Junyi stood behind Feng Qing and slowly said, "Feng Qing, if one day you want to restore your identity as a woman, this prince can help you." Feng Qing was stunned at first, then left without saying anything. This pregnant woman wanted to give the female lead a child. Little did she know that Feng Qing was actually a woman. The final outcome was tragic. Just as Feng Qing arrived at his doorstep, he encountered the Bai family mother and daughter. Feng Qing hadn't forgotten how this woman had schemed to frame him not long ago, shamelessly wanting to marry him. However, this time the Bayou mother and daughter had learned their lesson. Seeing Feng Qing, they were very polite to him. This proper behavior made him feel a bit uncomfortable. This time, Bayou's purpose for coming was to ask for his help. He thought, how could someone usually so two-faced suddenly become so agreeable? Somehow this woman had heard about her close relationship with Junyi, so she wanted to pull Feng Qing into concubine Lu's camp. This scheme was well planned, but Feng Qing still flatly refused. Seeing this, Bayou accused Feng Qing of looking down on concubine Lu. Feng Qing was unhappy. How could this woman say such things? And she had no tact at all. Who did she think she was? Did the sun have to revolve around her every day? Seeing her words had no effect, Bayou again brought up concubine Lu as her backer. If Feng Qing didn't agree, it would be defying an imperial order. Feng Qing laughed. It was the first time he'd heard of a concubine ordering around a minister's son. Their general's mansion wasn't afraid, and except for an imperial edict, no one's words carried weight. Feng Qing's words were too harsh, and they immediately started arguing. In the end, however, Bayou was thoroughly defeated by Feng Qing's eloquence and shamelessness. She could only leave in anger. She had thought that mentioning concubine Lu would surely make Feng Qing comply. She had already boasted to concubine Lu that she would definitely win over Feng Qing today. Now this stubborn young man was so obstinate. She couldn't blame herself for being ruthless now. Just then, a servant came to report that someone named Zhou Rua wanted to see Bayou. Bayou was a bit surprised. She didn't have a good relationship with this young lady, at least not enough for casual visits. As soon as she opened her mouth, she said she had a grudge against Feng Qing. As they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Her purpose for coming this time was to discuss with Bayou how to deal with their common enemy, Feng Qing. At this time, Feng Qing was living an idle life in the mansion. Unexpectedly, the housekeeper rushed in, saying someone outside was looking for him, claiming to be pregnant with his child. Feng Qing was stunned upon hearing this. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. He remembered that someone had used this trick not long ago. He didn't know what was so great about their Feng family that everyone was desperate to get in. As soon as Feng Qing went out, he was passionately called by a woman. Seeing the woman before him, Feng Qing was even more certain that he didn't know her at all. Someone must have sent her to frame him. But the onlookers didn't think so. Feng Qing's reputation was already bad, and now with this incident, no one would believe him anymore. Seeing her chance, the woman kept asking Feng Qing if he was abandoning her and the child. In front of everyone, she portrayed Feng Qing as all sorts of versions of a heartless man. Feng Qing was extremely annoyed by this situation, so he asked her various tricky questions, hoping to make her give up. Unexpectedly, the woman answered all of Feng Qing's questions. She was clearly well prepared. Finally, Feng Qing had no choice but to agree to marry her. However, he had a condition. After the child was born, they would do a blood test for paternity. If the child wasn't his, he wouldn't be polite about it. The woman was completely thrown off by Feng Qing's words. She didn't expect such a stubborn young man to think of a blood test. Faced with Feng Qing's words, the woman suddenly felt immense pressure. This woman had schemed to frame the female lead, wanting to bear him a child. In the end, her plan failed, and she used Feng Qing's fiancé Lin Shui as a scapegoat. Feng Qing was at his limit. Framing him was one thing, but now she wanted to drag Lin Shui into it. He'd show this woman a thing or two. The woman couldn't handle Feng Qing's threats. She wanted to back down, but unexpectedly stumbled as she retreated. This scared Feng Qing. Although the woman before him was detestable, he didn't want to cause 2 deaths. The woman fell to the ground. She clutched her belly and kept crying out. Feng Qing could see at a glance that the woman on the ground was about to give birth prematurely. She kept calling out to save the child in her womb. Feng Qing had no choice but to help the woman inside. After a series of procedures, the woman finally woke up. But when she opened her eyes and saw the child in Feng Qing's arms, she was so frightened that she sat up suddenly. Seeing this, Feng Qing quickly returned the child to the woman and told her that although the child was born, it was stillborn. The woman was pregnant, but someone had been giving her slow-acting poison for a long time. Feng Qing had already helped detoxify her body, but he couldn't save the baby. Hearing this, the woman burst into tears. She should have known that there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. If she hadn't met Feng Qing today, she probably would have died from the poison on her way back. Hearing this, the woman immediately revealed Bai Yu and Zhou Ruo's entire plot. Feng Qing hadn't expected these two to work together to deal with him. He was furious. At this moment, Feng Qing was completely unaware that there was someone on his roof, listening to their conversation clearly. He needed to quickly tell Junyi about Feng Qing being framed. Junyi immediately reported this matter to the emperor. How dare they touch his woman? They must face the consequences. The emperor was curious that Junyi would tattle to him for a woman. It seemed his homosexuality was getting more serious, but he had heard that Feng Qing had a fiancée. It didn't seem reasonable for Junyi to be so involved in this matter. Although he didn't oppose Junyi liking a man, he would need an heir eventually. Faced with the emperor's series of questions, Junyi calmly replied, "Royal brother, please don't worry. Qing'er and I will have our own baby." This answer completely baffled the emperor. How could 2 men have a baby? The emperor wanted to ask more, but Junyi clearly didn't want to continue the conversation and waved his hand as he left. This woman disguised as a man was framed as a promiscuous gay man, but the male lead saved her just in time. The outcome was satisfying. Bai Yu and Zhou Ruo failed to frame Feng Qing, and their servant even came to the Feng mansion. No matter how hard the Feng family servants tried to stop her, they couldn't. Feng Qing wanted to see what other tricks these two could pull. As soon as the servant saw Feng Qing, she started kowtowing, begging him to save their young miss. This was interesting. He had been framed by these two and hadn't even settled the score yet, and now they had the nerve to ask him for help. From Zhou Ruo's maid, he learned that she had been taken to a tavern by someone called Wang Wenzi. They hoped Feng Qing could rescue her. Feng Qing isn't stupid. If Zhou Ruo hadn't actively provoked Wang Wen, he wouldn't have done it. However, Wang Wen has always been at odds with him. Who knows how Zhou Ruo woke up? Since that's the case, he might as well go and see Zhou Ruo's secret. He led Feng Qing all the way, pointing to the door ahead and telling him Zhou Ruo is in there. Feng Qing was quite famous. These people recognized Feng Qing's identity at a glance. But he wasn't afraid today. Behind him stood a group of tall and fierce men. He was best at fighting. In no time, he rushed to the building. He kicked the door open with one foot. He saw two people drinking and chatting about life on the edge of the bed. Wang Wenzi gave Feng Qing a cold look as soon as he saw him. The two had disliked each other since childhood. Now they looked even more like they had squinty eyes. Wang Wenzi stood in front of Zhou Ruo as if protecting a treasure. Feng Qing laughed. You should know. He came out this time because Zhou Ruo's maid notified him. Now what was this all about? Looking at Zhou Ruo's appearance, it was clearly a one-sided expression. Sure enough, the next second, Zhou Ruo directly stated that he and Wang Wenzi were in love, denying that he had asked the maid to find him earlier. That fool Wang Wenzi still stupidly thought he was too handsome, attracting Zhou Ruo, and believed Zhou Ruo's sweet words completely. Then, with a few words from Zhou Ruo, Wang Wenzi quickly shifted his target to Feng Qing. Today, Feng Qing disturbed his date, peeling off a layer of his skin. He swore to get revenge. Then he pounced on Feng Qing. Feng Qing blocked Wang Wenzi's attack with his hand and gave him another kick. Wang Wenzi fell to the ground, looking for his front teeth. Just then, Zhou Ruo took advantage of the moment when no one was paying attention and took out a silver needle from somewhere. He pulled Feng Qing's hand, saying things like asking Feng Qing to spare Wang Wenzi to divert his attention. When Feng Qing wasn't looking, he directly stabbed his hand. Feng Qing shook off Zhou Ruo's hand in pain, but he had already fallen for the trap, and he could see at a glance that Zhou Ruo had just given him an aphrodisiac. Seeing the timing was right, Zhou Ruo quickly pressed Feng Qing's hand to his chest. He was sure that Feng Qing had no chance of turning the tables this time. At this moment, Feng Qing's consciousness was already starting to blur. The next second, he fell directly into Zhou Ruo's arms. Zhou Ruo took the opportunity to shout that Feng Qing was molesting him. This time, Feng Qing's reputation became even worse. He didn't believe that Junyi would still stay with such a person next time. But just as Zhou Ruo thought this plan was perfect, Junyi appeared in time and pulled Feng Qing back. Zhou Ruo still wanted to take the opportunity to slander Feng Qing as a promiscuous barbarian, but Junyi wasn't so easily fooled. Feng Qing's appearance clearly showed he had been drugged. Wang Wen was still confused about the situation at this moment. The next second, he was arrested by Junye's men. This man, while hugging, ended up on the bed with the male lead. Not only that, but he was also constantly breathing unknown gases onto the man's neck. If this were a normal man, who could stand it? He couldn't care about so much anymore. He decided to devour someone completely first. Afterwards, Junyi felt very regretful. As a prince, his self-control was too poor. He didn't know how Feng Qing would react when he woke up. Just then, Feng Qing opened his eyes. At this moment, their expressions were like the sixth emoji on your phone. It was so fucking awkward. Junyi hurriedly explained to Feng Qing that what he did last night was to help him, and that it was all Feng Qing's initiative. Actually, even if Junyi didn't explain, he knew he didn't mind. He put on his clothes and told Junyi that he didn't take this matter to heart. Then he even praised Junye's driving skills. Junyi was stunned seeing Feng Qing like this. Other women would cry about marriage if you looked at them twice, but he was completely calm after being devoured. Anyway, he couldn't be a scumbag, and he would even carry Feng Qing back in a grand sedan chair. Feng Qing quickly stopped this guy from overthinking. He was living as a man now. How could he possibly marry him? It was absolutely impossible. Junyi became anxious. He was a noble prince. Was it so difficult to be with the woman he liked? Feng Qing didn't explain too much for himself. After all, she had been disguised as a man for a long time. There were some things that made it unsuitable for her to resume her female attire at present. Even though Junyi repeatedly asked Feng Qing about the reason for her male disguise, Feng Qing didn't reveal anything. At night, Feng Qing was still thinking about what happened during the day. Suddenly, a sneaky figure appeared in front of Feng Qing. Feng Qing instantly transformed into a little devil. Someone actually came to steal from his house. This person was in for it now. The person entered the room and started rummaging around, as if afraid others wouldn't know he was a thief. Just then, the person suddenly smelled a strange fragrance. Before he could react, he was already pinned to the ground by Feng Qing. After subduing the person, Feng Qing directly splashed water on him to wake him up. As soon as the person woke up, he recognized Feng Qing. It seemed this guy had come to his house on purpose. Feng Qing then took a dagger and traced various patterns on the thief's waist. The thief was scared and sweating profusely, but still kept his mouth shut. It seemed he had encountered a tough nut to crack this time. He wondered if this tough nut would be better to eat with alcohol than pork. Staring at Feng Qing's devilish expression, the thief chickened out. He absolutely believed that if he angered Feng Qing, he would be used as a snack with alcohol. He confessed. This visit to the Feng mansion was all the War King's idea. This time, it was Feng Qing who lost his composure. He almost dropped the dagger in his hand. This joke was a bit too much. Can you believe it? This man was actually a thief. Whether he was stealing people or things was unclear. Anyway, he was caught red-handed by Feng Qing and directly thrown in front of Junyi. Junyi was heartbroken and embarrassed. He told the man to get lost. He couldn't even handle a small task without getting caught. He had completely lost face. Feng Qing hadn't expected that the mighty War King would actually send someone to steal from his house. Given their relationship, if Junyi wanted anything, wouldn't he just give it to him? Junyi didn't mince words anymore. He said he liked Feng Qing and asked if Feng Qing would give himself to him. Feng Qing was stunned. He wasn't an object. How could he be given? Feng Qing pondered for a moment, guessing that Junyi probably wanted to go to the Feng mansion to find evidence of his hidden identity. He didn't know why this guy was so obsessed with his affairs. Junyi was unhappy. Was it wrong to be devoted to the woman he liked? He was so passionate, yet this woman didn't even feel a bit moved. Moreover, by now, Feng Qing could be considered his person. This statement really upset Feng Qing. Junyi even declared that if he couldn't find a reason for Feng Qing's male disguise in a day, he would send people to turn the Feng mansion upside down. He was truly speechless. He had never met such an unreasonable person. The situation had developed to a point Feng Qing didn't want to see. He then decided to come clean with Junyi. After all, he knew that if he didn't speak up, this guy would really send people to search his house every day. Actually, Feng Qing had a twin brother since childhood. The two were very close. When he was 7, he was taken to his grandmother's house. Soon after, he received news of his brother's death. His father had been at war for years, and thus had many enemies. His brother died under an enemy's sword while trying to save their father. When Feng Qing returned to the Feng mansion, he found Feng Lin had gone mad and was crying every day. To comfort his father, Feng Qing put on his brother's clothes. Unexpectedly, when his father saw Feng Qing, he immediately acted as if nothing had happened. His previous symptoms of madness were all gone. From then on, he decided to live as his brother, disguised as a man. The elders in the family actually knew about his female identity. If it weren't for the help of people in the mansion, he wouldn't have been able to keep it a secret for so long. Junyi was speechless. Didn't his father notice that a daughter was missing? Actually, regarding this point, Feng Lin had always thought his daughter was still living well at her grandmother's house. Every year, when Feng Lin wanted to visit his daughter in the countryside, Feng Qing would stop him with various excuses. Junyi was displeased. Did it mean the woman he liked would always live as a man? What about him then? Feng Qing obviously didn't want to dwell on this issue. If that day really came, they would deal with it then. Junyi had no choice but to compromise for now. But no matter what, he would always be Feng Qing's strongest support and most reliable man. Just as the lovey-dovey atmosphere between them reached its peak, a discordant voice came through. It was a eunuch from the palace looking for Feng Qing. This unexpected visit made Feng Qing feel uneasy. This woman disguised as a man had her true identity discovered by a fat man. Unexpectedly, the vicious Empress Dowager learned of this. She not only spread the news, but also wanted to destroy the woman's entire family. The crown prince was seriously ill. Concubine Lu recommended Feng Qing to the emperor for treatment. As soon as he arrived at the palace, he encountered the fierce empress. The empress saw the eunuch leading the way and questioned why he hadn't gone to find the divine doctor yet. The eunuch didn't dare lie to the empress. He said that Feng Qing was the divine doctor that concubine Lu and the emperor had asked him to find. The empress didn't believe it. Feng Qing looked so young. How could he look like a divine doctor? It must be a joke. Feng Qing knew that his age would invite criticism, so he didn't get angry. On the contrary, the empress insisted that Feng Qing was an imposter. If he couldn't cure the prince, she would have his life. Feng Qing had no choice. He didn't expect to receive such a dangerous task, but with the emperor's verbal order, he had to go even if he didn't want to. Concubine Lu was Bai Yu's cousin. They were discussing Feng Qing's situation. Bai Yu didn't understand why concubine Lu would give such a good opportunity to Feng Qing. Little did he know that this was concubine Lu's cleverness. After all, it was the crown prince. If any problems remained, it would mean execution. However, Bai Yu's thoughts were clearly not on the same wavelength as Lu Fei's. With Feng Qing's medical skills, he felt that the crown prince's illness wouldn't be difficult for Feng Qing to handle. Lu Fei wasn't worried. Even if Feng Qing cured the crown prince, As long as he entered the palace, his fate would be in their hands. If he couldn't be used for their benefit, then Feng Qing had no reason to live. At this moment, Feng Qing didn't know that he had fallen into someone else's scheme. He was fully focused on applying acupuncture to the crown prince. The imperial doctor beside him watched Feng Qing's skillful technique with amazement and pity. Soon, the treatment was finished. Feng Qing had just instructed the imperial doctors to take good care of the crown prince, saying he would wake up soon. Unexpectedly, before he could finish speaking, he collapsed from exhaustion. The fat imperial doctor Yu quickly caught him, stabilizing Feng Qing's body. When he checked Feng Qing's pulse, he suddenly froze. This pulse was clearly that of a woman. He seemed to have discovered something extraordinary. The next second, the fat imperial doctor went directly to Lu Fei's quarters. As soon as Lu Fei saw the fat imperial doctor, he asked if he had followed his instructions to poison Feng Qing. Upon learning that the fat doctor hadn't followed his plan, he became furious. This dog of a servant was getting bolder. However, the fat doctor revealed news even bigger than poisoning. He had discovered that Feng Qing was a woman. Hearing this news, Lu Fei was delighted that heaven was on his side. If Feng Qing was truly a woman disguised as a man, not only he but the entire Feng family would be guilty of deceiving the emperor. At this moment, a vicious idea was spreading in Lu Fei's mind. He immediately gave an order to spread this news. He wanted everyone in the capital to know. This time, he would ensure the entire Feng family would die without a burial place. Can you believe it? This woman just took a nap, and the news of her disguising as a man spread throughout the capital's streets and alleys. If it were you, what would you do? In the imperial study, two people were happily discussing Feng Qing's situation when Lu Fei suddenly requested to see the emperor. This surprised the emperor. The women in the harem were all cunning and wouldn't casually come to see him without reason. The emperor asked what the matter was. Lu Fei deliberately hesitated, not knowing how to say it. Junyi didn't give him any face. He said if Lu Fei didn't know how to say it, then don't say it. This made Lu Fei quite embarrassed. He came to report something. How could he not say it? He didn't expect to be rebuffed by Junyi so quickly. Lu Fei deliberately made the matter seem mysterious, successfully piquing the emperor's interest. At this point, Lu Fei didn't beat around the bush and directly told the emperor about Feng Qing's female identity. He suspected such a person had ulterior motives. Whether there were ulterior motives or not didn't matter, as long as the emperor thought so. Lu Fei had expected the emperor to be very surprised about this matter. After all, everyone in the capital had been deceived. But looking at the emperor's expression now, he wasn't surprised at all, and even seemed a bit happy. What was going on? Actually, Junyi had already told the emperor about this earlier. He had always thought Junyi was homosexual. Now that Feng Qing turned out to be a woman, he was overjoyed. There was no crime of deceiving the emperor. This time it was Lu Fei who was stunned. He didn't expect that in the end, he would be the fool. Hadn't he rejoiced for nothing? Junyi glanced sideways at Lu Fei. Earlier, when his men saw the fat doctor rushing to Lu Fei, he sensed something was wrong. This woman wanted to use Feng Qing's identity against him. She was dreaming. As long as he was around, no one could harm a hair on Feng Qing's head. Meanwhile, Feng Qing had woken up. He didn't know that just because he took a nap, the situation outside had completely changed. Seeing Lu Rushi beside him, Feng Qing quickly grabbed his hand and asked about the crown prince's condition. Unexpectedly, Lu Rushi immediately shook off Feng Qing's hand and stepped back 3 meters. No joke, she was now a woman. If Junyi knew they had held hands, he would skin him alive. Feng Qing was confused by Lu Rushi's reaction. They were both men. Was such a big reaction necessary? At this moment, Lu Rushi expressed sympathetically to Feng Qing. You don't need to pretend anymore. Now not only he but the entire capital knows you're a woman. Lu Rushi's words completely shocked Feng Qing. How long had he slept? His female identity had already spread throughout the capital's streets and alleys. He was furious. Who on earth spread this news? Just then, Junyi suddenly spoke up, telling Feng Qing about Lu Fei's attempt to harm him. At this point, the first person Feng Qing thought of was his father. Back then, Feng Lin had gone mad because of his brother's death. If Feng Lin learned the truth now, what would happen? He dared not imagine. Immediately, Feng Qing ran back home, ignoring Jun Ye's attempts to stop him. A son raised for 18 years suddenly turning into a daughter. Even TV dramas wouldn't dare to write such a plot. As soon as Feng Qing hurriedly ran back home, a group of servants surrounded him. Now that Feng Qing's identity as a woman was exposed, their first action was to inform Feng Qing about it. They also learned from the Feng household servants that since Feng Lin found out about this, he had locked himself in his study. Just as Feng Qing reached the door, he heard a loud bang from inside. He quickly kicked open the door, only to see Feng Lin attempting to hang himself. Without hesitation, he immediately took out a dagger and cut the rope. Feng Lin fell from the beam as a result. It seems this incident had indeed greatly impacted Feng Lin to the point of contemplating suicide. At this moment, Feng Lin was also feeling very guilty. He never realized that the daughter he had raised for over a decade had been hiding her true identity all along. He felt he had failed as a father and didn't deserve to live. His daughter had been dressing as a man for years just to spare his feelings. He was too remorseful. Feng Qing couldn't bear to see his father so upset. If Feng Lin really couldn't get over this, he would surely be the one to go mad in the end. Hearing Feng Qing say this, Feng Lin immediately abandoned his suicidal thoughts. He had already let Feng Qing down for so many years. Now he needed to make it up to her. Now that he saw Feng Lin was alright, he felt very happy. This had been his wish for many years. He just wanted them to be well. The two reconciled, creating a touching scene. Now that Feng Lin's issue was resolved, it was time to address his own situation. Since everyone knew he was a woman now, there was no need to clarify anymore, right? He had been so stressed about this before. Then Feng Lin mentioned that Lin Shui was a good girl and expressed interest in adopting her as a goddaughter. This way, his two daughters would have each other for company. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Feng Lin's mind. Was Feng Qing so eager to discuss her marriage because she already had someone outside? Previously, there were rumors about her and Junyi being homosexual. Feng Qing was embarrassed to death. As expected of his father, he had guessed his thoughts so quickly. But how could he be frank about it? To be honest, although Junyi held a high position and great power, Feng Lin didn't approve of their relationship. The main issue was that Junyi, being a prince, was involved in deep and complex matters. Hearing this, Feng Qing felt a bit guilty. He didn't dare tell Feng Lin about his relationship with Junyi, let alone that they had already slept together. Just then, Junyi arrived. Feng Lin's face immediately fell. This guy came here so often, he was treating this place like his own home. He had just recognized his daughter. He couldn't let this young man steal her away. Junyi informed them that since Feng Qing had treated the crown prince, the emperor decided to hold a banquet in the palace. As the primary contributor, Feng Qing naturally couldn't be absent. Standing between them, Feng Lin watched as the two exchanged glances and subtle expressions. He felt uncomfortable, like his precious daughter was being eyed by a wolf. He felt he couldn't let things continue like this, so he immediately stepped forward to block Junye's line of sight. He said he would accompany Feng Qing to the banquet this time, so there was no need to trouble Junyi. Junyi knew Feng Lin wouldn't be so easy to deal with, but he had his ways. Then the two of them walked in together. It's unclear what Junyi said to Feng Lin, but when they came out, Feng Lin had agreed to Junye's request to personally escort Feng Qing to the palace tonight. Feng Qing was curious to know what Junyi had said to Feng Lin, but as soon as he asked, Feng Lin scolded him, saying, "You're a woman now? Why do you need to know so much?" The two were being so secretive and wouldn't let him know. This man stood at the door like a wooden statue, almost becoming a husband-prospering stone. Thinking about seeing Feng Qing in women's clothes later, he arrived at the door an hour early. Finally, Feng Qing appeared. When he first saw her, Junyi was completely stunned. Who was this little fairy? She was so beautiful he couldn't even speak. Their eyes met, one shy, the other even shyer. Even Lu Rushi, standing nearby, was shocked. She was so beautiful. It was impossible to tell that this little fairy was the same rough and rowdy Feng Qing. Indeed, clothes make the man or woman. Feng Qing leaned close to Junyi and teased, "Your Highness, why are you staring? Have you been captivated by my charm?" Junyi awkwardly averted his gaze. He had been too out of character just now. He never thought he'd be captivated by beauty one day. This banquet was mainly to honor Feng Qing for saving the crown prince. The emperor granted him permission to enter the palace freely and use any medicinal herbs from the imperial storage. This delighted Feng Qing immensely. He loved poisons and medicinal herbs, especially those from the palace. And he didn't have to spend his own money. In previous palace banquets, concubine Lu would always prepare some performances to showcase her talents. But this time, to deliberately embarrass Feng Qing, she decided to have a poetry recitation contest. Concubine Lu openly stated that she wanted Feng Qing to participate with her. On the surface, her words sounded pleasant, but it was all because of Feng Qing's reputation as a good-for-nothing young master. She didn't believe this person could do anything impressive. He was sure to make a fool of himself. Seeing Lu Fei's smug expression, Feng Qing felt extremely annoyed. He hadn't even agreed, yet this woman was already rambling on and on. But the next moment, Feng Qing was stunned by Lu Fei's actions. Lu Fei recited a poem with the moon as its theme. To be honest, Feng Qing didn't understand it at all, but it didn't seem too bad, and it received applause from many officials. Lu Fei continued to bring the topic to Feng Qing, saying if he couldn't compose a poem, it would shame his mother. Some people who knew the inside story were stunned. Everyone knew Feng Qing only indulged in eating, drinking, gambling, and debauchery. Now he had just changed his clothes, not his brain. How could he possibly compose poetry? Feng Qing couldn't help but feel a headache. This damned woman was definitely doing this on purpose. Well, he'd show her by reciting from the 300 Tang poems. If he wanted to, any poem he chose would be a classic. At this moment, Lu Fei also noticed the change in Feng Qing. Logically, a good-for-nothing should be afraid, so why did he have such a strong presence? Then, Li Bai's quiet night thoughts flowed from his lips. The next second, everyone was shocked. Not only was this a quatrain, but the speed at which he recited was as fast as a flying plane. Feng Qing exuded strong confidence. If Lu Fei thought that wasn't enough, he could recite more. Then, in front of everyone, Feng Qing entered recitation mode. Lu Fei's mind was buzzing as if struck by lightning. She couldn't understand how Feng Qing could perform so well. Even the emperor was excitedly praising him. What a joke. He had already completed his 9 years of compulsory education. How could such an easy question stump him? However, at this moment, Feng Qing didn't know that his every move had caught someone's eye. That interested gaze seemed to regard Feng Qing as prey. Instinctively sensing danger, Feng Qing couldn't help but shudder. But when he turned to look, he saw nothing except a bustling crowd. He didn't notice anyone suspicious. Had he imagined it? This dog of a man wasn't just a stalker. He also liked to perform strip shows on the street. Just ask if you like it or not. As soon as Feng Qing returned to the Feng residence, he was confused by Feng Ling's series of actions. What was she cursing about behind closed doors in broad daylight? Feng Qing took a closer look. It seemed to be General Wang's wife and son. Wang Shi learned from Feng Ling that these people had come to propose marriage to Lin Shui. This frightened Feng Qing. The previous one was his colleague's son, but he already had a harem of wives and concubines, living like a rooster. He didn't meet Feng Ling's standards at all, so she kept him out. Feng Qing hadn't expected that as soon as he broke off his engagement with Lin Shui, someone would set their sights on her. That wouldn't do. He needed to have a good talk with Lin Shui. So, he invited Lin Shui out. As they walked down the street, they became the most eye-catching sight. Suddenly, a figure darted in front of Lin Shui. Feng Qing recognized him as the one who had just been refused entry at the Feng residence when proposing marriage. He hadn't expected him to follow them all this way. The man ignored Feng Qing's words, staring at Lin Shui with lustful eyes and drooling. Seeing Wang Xian's behavior, Feng Qing immediately stepped in front of Lin Shui. But even so, Wang Xian kept making eyes at Lin Shui. Lin Shui, having no experience in love, thought his eyes were simply not working properly. Feng Qing finally understood. This dim-witted dog of a man was actually trying to seduce Lin Shui right in front of him. But that girl hadn't realized it at all. The man stated that if Lin Shui agreed to marry him, he would immediately dismiss all the hens in his household and dote on her alone. Lin Shui was displeased. She had no interest in this rooster-like man with a household full of hens who still wanted to philander outside. Feng Qing smirked coldly. People like Wang Xian weren't just beneath their notice. Even their maids wouldn't give him a second glance. Wang Xian hadn't expected Feng Qing to humiliate him like this. It was extremely embarrassing. He pointed at Feng Qing and accused him of having short sleeves. Feng Qing was stunned. Where did this guy come up with such an analysis? Lin Shui then learned from Wang Xian that Feng Qing had previously dressed as a man to easily enter brothels and satisfy himself. This analysis method was quite something. The more Wang Xian spoke, the more he believed he was right. Little did he know that Feng Qing was already completely infuriated. This dog of a man dared to slander him. It seemed he needed to teach him a lesson, or he wouldn't know why the flowers bloom. Then, a mosquito flew to Wang Xian's neck and gave him a fierce bite. The next second, his neck became extremely sensitive and unbearably itchy. Until the two left, Wang Xian still didn't know what was happening. He was left alone, performing vigorously on the street. Who knows how long it took before Wang Xian finally escaped from the street. But after such a humiliating experience, he was determined to seek revenge. Perhaps because this dog of a man was too fickle, before he could finish complaining, someone put a bag over his head. Unexpectedly, in broad daylight, someone was trying to abduct Lin Shui. When the bag was removed from his head, the person before him shocked him once again. This woman stood by the window, almost becoming a wife-gazing moment. The moon was already out, yet Lin Shui hadn't returned. He couldn't help but worry. However, at this moment a figure suddenly appeared. Feng Qing immediately recognized that this was someone Junyi had sent to protect Lin Shui. The person immediately told Feng Qing that Lin Shui had disappeared. Feng Qing was shocked. Someone had actually managed to take her away, right under Jun Ye's secret guard's noses. He learned from the person that Lin Shui had been buying rouge on the street, and he had been following her from behind. But someone knocked him out from behind unexpectedly. When he woke up, Lin Shui was nowhere to be seen. Logically, Lin Shui had a good personality and hadn't offended anyone. Who could be targeting her? The secret guard suggested that the Wang mansion had a type of search dog. They could use it to find people. They just needed to let the dog sniff something Lin Shui had used. Feng Qing thought this was promising, so he quickly asked him to bring the dog. Meanwhile, Wang Xian had been coveting Lin Shui for a long time. Looking at her appearance, his saliva was dripping like tears, resembling a toad. He tried to approach Lin Shui, but was quickly pushed away by her. Lin Shui thought she couldn't escape this time, but unexpectedly, the door was kicked open the next second. Feng Qing was seen entering with a fierce dog. Wang Xian had never seen such a scene and immediately screamed in fear. Fortunately, Feng Qing arrived in time, and Lin Shui hadn't suffered any substantial harm. Wang Xian had already been subdued by the secret guard. Feng Qing looked at Wang Xian and felt something was off. Seeing him still looking like a drooling toad, Feng Qing felt that this guy seemed to have been drugged with some cheap substance. He immediately took out a medicine bottle and let Wang Xian smell it. Then he sneezed violently, and the drug's effects wore off. Although this guy had improper thoughts about Lin Shui, it didn't seem like he would do such a thing without reason. Wang Xian immediately apologized to Lin Shui, saying he had been drugged, which was why he acted that way towards her. But when Feng Qing asked who drugged him, he didn't say a word. Feng Qing didn't have the patience to play along. If there really was someone behind Wang Xian, even if they escaped this time, the next time might not be so fortunate. Faced with Feng Qing's questioning gaze, Wang Xian panicked completely. He knew Feng Qing had military backing, but if he revealed the mastermind, he would be dead. Feng Qing thought that although Wang Xian's father had some status in the court, whoever could make him so afraid must be someone extraordinary. At this time, the secret guard stepped forward again, asking Feng Qing if he wanted to hand this guy over to Junyi for interrogation. After all, Junyi's interrogation methods were much stronger than his. Feng Qing considered it and thought this plan was feasible, so he handed it over to him to handle, thinking that this time he had created another opportunity for Junyi and Feng Qing to meet. His private funds for the month were secured. After this woman's cross-dressing was exposed, she was immediately surrounded by a wave of people proposing marriage. Unexpectedly, when the male lead found out, he became furious. The outcome was surprising. After Lin Shui's kidnapping incident, on the way back, Feng Qing continuously worked on Lin Shui's mindset. Unexpectedly, as soon as they returned, they saw a box of champagne and a pile of silver coins at their doorstep. And there was a row of dazzling, handsome men standing there. What day is it today? Such a grand scene. Feng Qing and Lin Shui were stunned for a moment, almost thinking they had come to the wrong place. Until Feng Ling came over, Feng Qing asked what was going on today. Were all these people here to propose to Lin Shui? Feng Qing had only guessed half right. These people weren't just here to propose, but they were here to propose to him. This scared Feng Qing silly. They were all here to propose to him? How was that possible? Since when did he have such great charm? Meanwhile, Junyi had heard early in the morning from Lu Rushi that more than 10 handsome men had come to propose to Feng Qing last night. He was on edge. However, Lu Rushi told him not to worry. Those people had all been chased away by Feng Qing. But come to think of it, why was Junyi so concerned about someone else's marriage? Could it be that he also had feelings for Fengqing? Junyi coughed awkwardly to hide his embarrassment. He hadn't expected that woman to be so charming that so many people would come to propose. Lu Rushi seemed unhappy, as if she couldn't get any gossip. Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration. She started praising Fengqing in front of Junyi, saying that if he didn't make a move soon, that juicy piece of meat would fall into someone else's bowl. Junyi was furious. What should he do? As the mighty war king, if he were to propose rashly, wouldn't it scare Fengqing to death? He was really troubled. Why was dealing with a woman harder than fighting a war? As he was pondering without reaching a conclusion, and Wei suddenly said he had something to tell him. The next second, his eyes lit up. He couldn't help but smile. He hadn't expected Wei to be so perceptive, handing over Wang Xian's matter to him. In that case, go and collect your silver. Junyi immediately set off. As long as he could interrogate the person who drugged Wang Xian, he would have a legitimate reason to find Fengqing. However, when he just arrived outside the room where Wang Xian was detained, he was shocked. He saw his men lying scattered on the ground. Yunyi's Hatsan. He immediately pushed open the door. Sure enough, Wang Xian was already dead. Junyi quickly informed Fengqing about this. After all, it was his oversight this time. Unexpectedly, the mastermind had acted so quickly. Fengqing was at a loss for a moment. The mastermind killing Wang Xian so blatantly clearly showed they had no fear. It's unclear who could have such great power. Based on Fengqing's analysis, Junyi immediately identified several people with greater power than the Wang family. Among these people, only the Empress and Lu Fei had some conflicts with Fengqing. He wasn't familiar with the others at all. Just then, Prince Ning suddenly came to visit, saying he was looking for Fengqing. They were both puzzled. To be honest, this person had no connection with Fengqing at all. They didn't even know each other. Why would he come? And Prince Ning was also one of the suspects Junyi had just listed. They say brothers are like limbs, women are like clothes. Other people's brothers are all loving, but these two couldn't see eye to eye whenever they met. What's more infuriating was that Prince Ning immediately asked Fengqing to treat his illness. Junyi was not pleased at all. Jun Ning hadn't expected Junyi to refuse outright and was stunned. Looking at Junye's protective stance, this was still the feared war king. Prince Ning wasn't convinced. If Junyi really wouldn't let Fengqing treat him, he would have to exaggerate this matter to the emperor. Their eyes met, both sides full of hostility. Fengqing saw the situation wasn't good and quickly intervened. Oh, if you just want to see his excellent medical skills, they're brothers. No need to make the relationship so tense. He then pulled Jun Ning aside to ease the tension between them. He'd treated his practice for himself and earned some extra money. Junyi was furious. He couldn't believe the woman he liked would stand beside another man right in front of him. Did this woman not know how jealous he was? He could only turn away angrily. In contrast, Jun Ning calmly took off his outer garment, showing no awareness of being an outsider. Seeing the crisscrossing scars on Jun Ning's back, Jun Ning thought Fengqing was scared. After all, she was a woman, unable to bear such an unpleasant sight. However, Fengqing wasn't affected. After all, her father was also a general, and she had seen plenty of such scars on Feng Lin when she was young. Then, Jun Ning brought up the relationship between Fengqing and Junyi. He had heard outside that they had reached the stage of discussing marriage. Fengqing hadn't expected the mighty Prince Ning to be so gossipy. But Fengqing didn't admit to it. Jun Ning still didn't give up. He seemed very interested in Fengqing's affairs, and even asked if Junyi had proposed to her. Fengqing helplessly replied, "Being single is cool for a while. Being single forever is cool forever." As soon as Fengqing finished speaking, Jun Ning suddenly stood up. This startled Fengqing. Was this guy still giving him acupuncture? What was he going to do? Unexpectedly, the next second, Jun Ning directly pinned Fengqing against the wall. The posture was so standard that Fengqing didn't react for a moment. He wondered if his charm had really skyrocketed recently. But Jun Ning's next words made Fengqing feel like he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He said, "If this prince were to propose to you, would you accept?" Hearing this, Fengqing quickly slipped away from his side and flatly refused Jun Ning's words. Jun Ning wasn't upset and asked Fengqing if he refused because he already had someone in his heart. This time, Fengqing's expression became unusually serious. Could this guy be serious about him? Then, to Fengqing's surprise, he said he would help Fengqing ask Junyi if he wanted to propose. If he didn't, he would seize the opportunity himself. But Feng Qing quickly stopped him. Feng Qing laughed awkwardly, not expecting Prince Ning to be so silly. His back was now covered with dozens of silver needles. Looking like a porcupine, he still wanted to run around and show off to that man. Framed by villains, he was accused of murder. Despite his high position, he almost ended up in jail under public pressure. Feng Qing understood Yun Ye's meaning. He was furious about treating Jun Ning's illness. As soon as he returned to the prince's mansion, he heard Lu Rushi say that Wang Xian's mother had come. Jun Yi was startled. He hadn't told anyone about Wang Xian being in the prince's mansion. It seemed the mastermind behind this wanted to frame him. Meanwhile, a woman was crying in front of Wang Xing, complaining about the unfairness of heaven. The moment she saw Jun Yi, the woman berated him without reason, not understanding why the prince's mansion would harm her son. Jun Yi wanted to explain, but the woman interrupted him. Wang Xian was brought in by their people. No matter what Jun Yi said, she wouldn't believe him. At this time, Lu Rushi also came to Jun Yi and explained the whole story about Wang Xian. But the woman was too emotional and didn't believe it at all. As soon as Lu Rushi finished speaking, the woman rushed towards them like a madwoman. Her emotions were extremely agitated. Fortunately, two strong men were there to stop her in time. Now that Wang Xing was also dead, her only son was her only reason for living. She wasn't afraid of anything now and just wanted justice for Wang Xing. Jun Yi was displeased. This woman kept accusing him of killing her son. Did she have no shame? He didn't need her yelling here. He would naturally investigate the truth. Since the matter had become public knowledge, Jun Yi naturally had Wang Xing's body sent back. But even so, it still couldn't appease the woman. Killing her son must have consequences. General Wang sighed. He clearly also believed that Jun Yi was involved in this matter. But Jun Ye's position was too high, and he had no way to deal with it. Just then a young man came over. He was the woman's cousin. He was the one who had revealed Wang Xian's whereabouts to them. His goal was to use the woman's hand to pin this matter on Jun Yi, make it known throughout the city, and completely ruin Jun Ye's reputation. With public pressure, even if the emperor favored Jun Yi, he would surely punish him. And that was what he wanted. Meanwhile, Feng Qing was still struggling with whether to apologize to Jun Yi for offending him yesterday and treating Jun Ning's illness when Lu Rushi hurriedly came over. He mainly came to tell Feng Qing that Jun Yi had been taken to the palace by the emperor for questioning. Feng Qing was shocked to hear this. He couldn't believe such a thing had happened in just one day. He told Feng Qing the whole story, hoping he could help Jun Yi find a way out. This matter had now become public knowledge. The emperor might put Jun Yi in jail due to various pressures. Lu Rushi was afraid Feng Qing would miss the point, so he kindly reminded him that this whole thing was because of Feng Qing. Otherwise, Jun Yi wouldn't have encountered such a mess. Well, Feng Qing didn't quibble. Now, to get Jun Yi out of trouble, they could only find out the truth. Both being doctors, they had a lot to discuss about Wang Xing's cause of death. But for now, they needed to figure out how Wang Xian died. After some discussion, they decided to examine Wang Xian's body before drawing any conclusions. Can you believe it? This woman actually brought a man to look for someone in a coffin. Just ask yourself, aren't you scared? Jun Yi was framed and almost ended up in jail. To help him find evidence, Feng Qing and Lu Rushi sneaked into Wang Xian's house and opened the coffin. In order to find the culprit, he had to offend Feng Qing. He then extracted the poison from Wang Xian's body. Time was tight, so he could only study it carefully after returning. Soon, Feng Qing identified the poison in Wang Xian's body and rushed to the pharmacy with Lu Rushi. As soon as Feng Qing entered the store, he got straight to the point. He revealed the name of the poison and asked the shopkeeper who had bought it recently. The shopkeeper looked embarrassed and didn't admit they had what Feng Qing mentioned. Feng Qing ignored the shopkeeper's excuses because he knew that kind of poison was only available in this pharmacy in the entire capital. Items like this poison are taboo everywhere. It's not just about whether anyone bought it or not. Even if someone did, they wouldn't disclose customer information without reason. Feng Qing wasn't giving up. He claimed that the Wang family matter involved the prince. If the prince found out that the poison was sold from here, the consequences would be obvious. Indeed, Jun Ye's status was very effective. The shopkeeper immediately turned pale with fright. Feng Qing smiled. It seemed that power and status were quite useful in certain situations. Meanwhile, in the palace, General Wang was fiercely accusing Jun Yi of his crimes. Hoping the emperor would punish him, severely. The emperor rubbed his forehead in frustration. He knew Junyi well and was sure he wouldn't poison an official, but the matter had already become public knowledge. He felt helpless. Just then, Feng Qing's voice came from outside, requesting an audience. The emperor was overjoyed. It seemed there might be a turning point. Feng Qing came in and went straight to the point. The poison in Wang Xian's body was a rare type called half-soul-consuming powder, and only one person had recently purchased this poison, the woman's cousin, Zhang Qi. Soon after, Zhang Qi was quickly apprehended by the guards. After interrogation, Zhang Qi quickly confessed to his crime. Upon hearing this, the woman was so shocked she could have fit an egg in her mouth. She couldn't understand how this man, not only her cousin, but also Wang Xian's cousin, could do such a heartless thing. From Zhang Qi's confession, they learned that he had some unpleasant history with Junyi. Unexpectedly, this time he happened to catch Wang Xian falling into Junyi's hands. So he decided to use Wang Xian to frame Junyi. Junyi looked at Shang Qi. Although the excuse was very weak, he didn't say much. Perhaps Zhang Qi was just a scapegoat. The real mastermind couldn't possibly be someone as foolish as Zhang Qi. Feng Qing helped Junyi clear his name of the accusation. To thank Feng Qing, Junyi decided to give him a reward. Feng Qing was delighted. When it came to rewards, what could be more practical than money? This displeased Junyi. Why was this woman so unambitious? Couldn't she think about becoming his princess or something? Just then, Jun Ling appeared out of nowhere, praising Feng Qing's intelligence, completely oblivious to being a third wheel. Feng Qing indeed knew that although this matter seemed simple, it was full of suspicious points. Zhang Qi didn't defend himself at all, and just confessed. This was very strange. He had prepared various excuses, but didn't use any of them. Jun Ling was puzzled, not expecting Feng Qing to still have doubts about this matter. Feng Qing didn't hide his thoughts. He felt Zhang Qi was just a scapegoat, and the real mastermind was still at large. Jun Ling smiled and teased Feng Qing, saying if the mastermind was still at large, they should be careful. He might use even more vicious methods to harm them in the future. Junyi was displeased hearing this. What did this guy mean? Was he cursing them right in front of them? And he always felt Jun Ming's smile had a malicious intent. Two-faced, but Jun Ming said playfully, "I'm worried about you, brother." Junyi almost threw up yesterday's dinner hearing this. When did this guy become so disgusting, saying such things? Jun Ling didn't stay long. Finding it boring, he said he was leaving. Watching Jun Ling's retreating figure, both of them started thinking. They both had a strange feeling that they should continue to investigate Zhang Qi. Besides, Feng Qing also noticed that from the first moment Junyi saw Jun Ling, he seemed to particularly dislike him and didn't know why. Junyi didn't expect Feng Qing to ask him this. He could only say that Jun Ling wasn't as harmless as he appeared. He was a dangerous person and told Feng Qing to stay away from him in the future. Feng Qing didn't expect Junyi to answer like this, but he had already promised to continue treating Jun Ling. What should he do? Would Junyi skin him alive if he knew? But he thought it's better not to say anything now. If Junyi got angry again, he'd find an excuse to explain when he got caught later. 3 women and 1 man undressing in a room were mistaken by the prince for engaging in improper activities. After clarifying the situation, it turned out to be a big misunderstanding. This woman was walking and humming a tune, feeling quite content. Just as Feng Qing reached his doorstep, Lin Shui called out to him. It turned out Lin Shui and Jiao Jiao had been waiting for her for a long time at the door. The moment Jiao Jiao saw Feng Qing, she was stunned. She had never seen Feng Qing in women's clothing before. So beautiful, like a fairy. She could hardly recognize her. Lin Shui also teased that even she was shocked the first time she saw Feng Qing in women's clothing. Jiao Jiao's main purpose for coming to the Feng residence was to invite Feng Qing and Lin Shui to accompany her to Bailing Temple in the suburbs to pray. She heard that the temple was very efficacious. Many couples in love would go there to pray. Feng Qing seemed to sense something different in Jiao Jiao's words. However, Feng Qing thought that if Junyi was really that efficacious, it wouldn't hurt to go there once. The next second, Feng Qing suddenly felt he had thought wrong. How could he think about such inappropriate things? He was still young. No. Unfortunately, his irregular heartbeat betrayed his current mood. At this moment, Jiao Jiao also noticed Feng Qing's unusual behavior. No, he absolutely couldn't let this little girl see through his thoughts. On the other side, as soon as Feng Qing and the others decided to go to Bailing Temple to pray. Junyi had already received the news. Junyi didn't think much of it. After all, it was quite normal for girls to burn incense and pray. But the secret guard who delivered the message didn't leave, which made Junyi a bit confused. Then the secret guard finally spoke, saying that Bailing Temple was famous for praying for good relationships. Junyi suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He sensed a strong crisis. Could it be that Feng Qing wanted to pray for a relationship? No, he had to go too. They moved very quickly. The old monk seemed to know Jiao Jiao. After exchanging a few words, he offered to take them to the guest rooms to rest. Jiao Jiao chimed in, saying the environment here was nice, and they could rest a bit before going out to look around. Feng Qing, who had just pushed open the door, was stunned by the scene inside. Meanwhile, as Feng Qing and the others had just entered the inner room, Junyi arrived at Bailing Temple shortly after. The monk thought Junyi was also someone Jiao Jiao had invited to help, so he offered to lead the way. The old monk led Junyi to the room where Feng Qing and the others were. The moment he pushed open the door, Junyi was also stunned. What did he see? At that moment, Feng Qing was sitting on the bed, helping a man take off his clothes. Feng Qing was also startled by Junyi's sudden appearance. How did this guy suddenly pop up? Junyi was furious. This little girl dared to undress a man in front of him. He was so jealous. Luckily, he had been smart enough to follow them. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know if he was being cheated on. However, at this moment, Jiao Jiao and Lin Shui walked out from behind the screen. This made Junyi even more uneasy. 3 women and 1 undressed man. Did they have this kind of fetish? Hearing Junyi's wild imagination, Feng Qing felt like vomiting blood. Was the mighty prince's head filled with nonsense? At this point, Jiao Jiao stepped forward and explained that the man on the bed was actually her lifesaver. Because he was seriously injured, they had tricked Feng Qing into coming here to treat him. She looked at Junyi, feeling a bit guilty. This woman had fallen in love with an assassin at first sight and tricked her best friend to come to the temple to treat the man. Unexpectedly, the man's identity was special, and his enemies quickly found him. Junyi learned from Jiao Jiao that this man's identity was actually an assassin. These 3 women were actually involved with an assassin. They were really daring. Junyi wanted to say more, but Feng Qing covered his big mouth with her hand. Men were indeed all jerks. Jiao Jiao clearly had feelings for that assassin. This guy kept babbling on and on. No matter how much he tried to signal with his eyes, Junyi remained oblivious. Although Jiao Jiao had tricked him, after learning about this man's identity, he could understand. Since he had saved Jiao Jiao, he would definitely treat this man's injuries. To be honest, apart from his questionable identity, this assassin was really handsome. Jiao Jiao had fallen for him at first sight. She was overjoyed to see that the man was alright. What surprised Feng Qing and the others was that the man immediately recognized Feng Qing and Junyi's identities, as well as Lin Shui, who was automatically ignored. Perhaps it was because Feng Qing and Junyi's auras were too strong, making Lin Shui seem invisible. Although the man had saved Jiao Jiao, there were still questions that needed to be asked. Since he was an assassin, who was he trying to kill before? They didn't want Jiao Jiao to get involved in any unclear situations for no reason. Hearing this, the man was so excited that he almost jumped out of bed. He was a qualified assassin and would never betray his client's information. Feng Qing looked at the man with an evil smile. The powerful war prince was standing right here, yet this little nobody dared to keep secrets. Wasn't he being too disrespectful to the war prince? This time, Junyi was very cooperative and continued Feng Qing's words. If this dog of a man didn't reveal who he was trying to kill, they would take him back to the prince's mansion and throw him in the dungeon. Jiao Jiao became anxious. That was her lifesaver and her love interest. She wanted to go and plead with Junyi on the man's behalf, but was stopped by Feng Qing. He couldn't allow an unknown threat to remain near Jiao Jiao unless they knew everything about him. The man finally compromised, maybe because of Jiao Jiao, or maybe to save his own life. He revealed everything. The person he was trying to assassinate before was Prince Ning. This answer was clearly beyond Feng Qing and Junyi's expectations. They learned from the man that his father used to work for Prince Ning, but the prince falsely accused him of crimes, causing his family to fall apart. Since then, he had worked hard to learn skills and became an assassin. Yesterday, he was supposed to assassinate Prince Ning, but not only did the assassination fail, he was also also surrounded and attacked by more than a dozen of the prince's secret guards. If he hadn't met Jiao Jiao yesterday, he would have been dead. Although he managed to escape this time, he felt that Prince Ning's men would soon catch up to him here. He was also very grateful to these people for saving his life. So now that he was awake, he should leave. Otherwise, he would definitely implicate everyone here. Junyi didn't expect this man to be so considerate of them. But unfortunately, things are unpredictable. Before they could come up with a solution, the old monk rushed in urgently. It turned out that Prince Ning's men had already surrounded the entire temple. Their goal was to make them hand over the assassin. This woman had fallen in love with an assassin, so she tricked Feng Qing and the others to come to the temple to help. But this assassin obviously still had a conscience. To prevent Jiao Jiao and the others from being implicated, he said he would escape on his own. It's worth noting that the person hunting him was Prince Ning, not just some nobody. They might all be unable to escape if things went wrong. Junyi was displeased upon hearing this. As the mighty war prince, who had he ever feared? Junyi wasn't worried about anything else. He just wanted to know if the assassin would continue to pursue Prince Ning if he helped him escape this time. The assassin was a bit stunned. He couldn't tell if Junyi was testing him or if he actually had a grudge against Prince Ning. He hated multiple-choice questions the most. He then tentatively asked, what if he gave up the assassination? Unexpectedly, Feng Qing behind Junyi shook her head, giving him a hint. The assassin immediately understood. It seemed they really had a grudge. That was great. To show his sincerity, he promised Junyi that as long as he had breath in his body, he would definitely kill his enemy. Junyi looked at him and thought he didn't seem to be lying, so he decided to trust him for now. Meanwhile, on the other side, Prince Ning's men had already started arguing with the temple monks. When Junyi came out and saw this scene, he unleashed his 360-degree aura. It scared these people stiff. They hadn't heard anything about Junyi and Feng Qing coming to the temple. Feng Qing also looked at them unceremoniously. What did they need to report to them when they came here? As for these guys, they looked so fierce that they could scare away the Buddha. The man felt a bit wronged. They were just here to chase an assassin. How could they possibly scare away the Buddha? Seeing that the person wasn't convinced, Feng Qing retorted mercilessly. This place was so small. Could he not see how many people were here? Where was the assassin? With the mighty war prince here, that person would definitely be dead already. Finally, Junyi played his trump card. He said he had come here with Feng Qing to pray for a good relationship, and if they scared away the Buddha and his wish wasn't fulfilled, he would skin these people alive. Feng Qing, listening to Junyi's grand words, was dumbfounded. Junyi's excuse left her feeling both embarrassed and speechless. But no matter what Junyi said, the people on the ground wouldn't get up. Good grief, this guy suspected him of harboring the assassin. It was fine if they suspected him, but didn't he have any face? Since that was the case, they might as well let them search. The man was happy to hear this and raised his head. Unexpectedly, Junyi continued, saying that if they couldn't find anything, he would definitely hold Prince Ning accountable when he got back. Hearing this, the man was in a dilemma. Both sides were princes, and he was really in a tough spot. At this point, a companion suggested a solution to the man. They could go back and say they had already searched Bailing Temple, but didn't find anyone. Otherwise, if they didn't find anyone, they would offend both sides. Their heads wouldn't be enough to pay for it. In the end, they reached an agreement not to search the temple. The assassin was eventually rescued successfully. He promised Junyi that after his wounds healed, he would continue to wait for an opportunity to assassinate Prince Ning. This woman was too ruthless. In order to see the Lantern Festival, she actually disguised herself as an ugly monster. If it were you, would you do the same? Feng Qing had just returned from Bailing Temple when she met Feng Ling coming towards her. It had only been a few hours since they last saw each other. Was her father missing her that much? Unexpectedly, as soon as Feng Ling opened his mouth, he started raging at Feng Qing. Now everyone in the capital knew that Junyi and Feng Qing went to Bailing Temple to pray for a good relationship. He was about to explode with anger. Feng Qing clearly hadn't expected the news to spread so quickly. The speed of information transmission was even faster than the old ladies at the village entrance. Because of this, Feng Qing was confined for half a month. Coincidentally, Today was also the annual Lantern Festival. If she couldn't go out, it would be a lifelong regret. This was when Lin Shui suggested that she could disguise herself as Feng Qing and take her place in confinement. This way, Feng Qing could go out and have fun. Feng Qing was so touched by this suggestion that she couldn't express it. This was truly her best friend. With her skills, she guaranteed that none of those people would recognize her. After some preparation, Feng Qing applied a layer of heavy makeup, creating a bizarre appearance. Under Lin Shui's watchful eye, she climbed out of the window. This was her first time attending the Lantern Festival in women's clothing. However, she never got tired of seeing the festival every year. To Feng Qing's surprise, even with this ghostly appearance, Sun Yi recognized her at first glance. His eyes were truly sharp. Looking at Feng Qing like this, Junyi found it somewhat amusing. His guard had already told him about Feng Qing's situation earlier, but seeing her in person, he still couldn't help but laugh out loud. Feng Qing didn't mind her appearance. Instead, she thought it was quite a coincidence that Junyi was here. Could it be that even the mighty war prince enjoyed strolling through night markets and watching lantern festivals? Junyi grabbed Feng Qing's sleeve and said with a slightly coquettish tone, "I want to watch the Lantern Festival with you. Is that okay?" This time, Junyi was absolutely confident he could win Feng Qing over. If he acted coy, even the usually stern emperor could be persuaded, let alone a woman. Sure enough, hearing Junyi's voice, Feng Qing felt her worldview completely overturned. At this moment, two women were whispering not far away. Yesterday, there were rumors that Junyi and Feng Qing had gone to pray for a good relationship, but now he was with another woman. Moreover, this woman was so ugly. Clearly, Feng Qing's disguise today was too unusual, and these people hadn't recognized her. Junyi suggested they quickly change locations. Otherwise, by tomorrow, his reputation as a playboy would spread throughout the entire capital. Feng Qing nonchalantly took Junyi's hand. Considering his earlier coy behavior, she decided to take him to a less crowded place. Feng Qing led Junyi to a spot where they could see fireworks all around. The place was indeed beautiful. However, looking at Feng Qing tonight, Junyi still couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. Such beautiful fireworks would be even more perfect without this bizarre makeup. Meanwhile, Feng Qing was unaware that Lin Shui, who was substituting for her, had already been targeted by a man in black. According to intelligence, Feng Qing was currently confined by Feng Ling. He came today to take Feng Qing's life. This man in black wanted to assassinate the female lead. However, before he could make a move, he was already knocked unconscious. Lin Shui inside the room was startled. At the moment the man in black fell, she seemed to hear a strange sound. But when she looked towards the window, she saw nothing. Had she really misheard? At this time, Feng Qing was unaware of the situation at the Feng residence, until a guard came to report that they had just caught an assassin trying to kill Lin Shui. Feng Qing was shocked upon hearing this. Lin Shui had no one to rely on and had a good personality. She wouldn't have any enemies here. How could someone try to assassinate her? Then Feng Qing realized that perhaps the assassin wasn't targeting Lin Shui at all, but her. Lin Shui was attacked because she was impersonating Feng Qing in the Feng residence today. At this moment, the guard handed over a jade pendant, saying it was found on the assassin. When they interrogated him, the assassin had already committed suicide by poison. Junyi, with his vast knowledge, recognized at a glance that the hairpin in his hand was from the palace. So he immediately ordered someone to investigate. The origin of the hairpin was quickly traced. According to the secret investigation, the hairpin belonged to concubine Lu. But Feng Qing felt that this matter wasn't so simple. It would be better to summon concubine Lu for questioning. With concubine Lu in the palace, getting her to come in person obviously wouldn't be easy. At this point, Feng Qing suggested that Lu Fei had wanted her help with treatment before. Now they could use this as an excuse to summon her. The next day, when Lu Fei heard that Feng Qing wanted to treat her, she happily came to the prince's mansion. Lu Fei believed that this time Feng Qing must have realized she couldn't avoid her, so she took the opportunity to try and curry favor. Junyi's people brought Lu Fei to the door, saying only she could enter alone. Lu Fei thought that since she was at the war prince's mansion, she should give Junyi face, so she dismissed her attendants. As soon as Lu Fei entered, someone threw a knife at her. This startled her. Then two people walked out of the room. Upon seeing Lu Fei, they got straight to the point, asking if she had sent someone to kill her. Lu Fei was confused by Feng Qing's accusation. What exactly did this woman mean? Seeing Lu Fei deny it, they took out the hairpin that the guard had obtained from the assassin. This time, Lu Fei didn't get angry. The hairpin was indeed hers. Feng Qing stopped beating around the bush and told Lu Fei that someone had tried to assassinate her yesterday, and this hairpin was found on the assassin. Lu Fei was furious. Although the hairpin was hers, she had lost it half a month ago. Everyone in the palace could testify to this. Lu Fei finished speaking and was about to leave, but as she turned, she was blocked by two strong men. Lu Fei glared at Junyi with a sinister look. Did these people intend to detain her? Junyi handed the hairpin to Lu Fei and told her to keep it safe, so it wouldn't be used by ill-intentioned people again. After that, Lu Fei took the hairpin and left angrily. Both of them agreed that although Lu Fei was cunning, she wasn't so careless. Clearly, the hidden black hand wanted to use this incident to frame someone. Lu Fei didn't know who was behind it all. The evil empress wanted to scheme and frame the girl, so she came up with a bad idea to sow discord. Unexpectedly, her plan was too flawed and was immediately seen through by Feng Qing and Junyi. The outcome was unexpected. After being humiliated at the War Prince's mansion, Lu Fei returned to the palace. A palace maid gave her a bad idea, telling Lu Fei she must get rid of Junyi and Feng Qing. The maid plotted for Lu Fei, suggesting to spread rumors about the two. In ancient times, if a woman didn't behave properly, she could be executed. But Feng Qing was no ordinary person. During this time, rumors were constant. Lu Fei then asked the maid which other men Feng Qing had been with besides Junyi. This question was simple, and the maid answered without thinking, mentioning Feng Qing's father. This answer obviously hurt Lu Fei deeply. The maid thought for a moment. She felt that Lu Rushi occasionally walked with Feng Qing too. The two had a lot to talk about regarding medicine. Lu Fei immediately ordered people to spread rumors about Feng Qing and Lu Rushi, making them as exaggerated as possible. She wanted to see how the famous Zhanlan would react when he learned his head was covered in green grass. The next morning, Lin Shui rushed to the Feng residence. Seeing Feng Qing, she was extremely anxious. Early this morning, she had heard rumors about Feng Qing outside, and they were extremely unpleasant. But when Feng Qing heard this news, she clearly didn't take it to heart. Rumors couldn't break through her strong inner defenses. Recently, rumors about her and Junyi had been coming one after another. Lin Shui was frustrated seeing Feng Qing's calm demeanor. She then told Feng Qing that this time the rumors were about her and Lu Rushi. Feng Qing was stunned upon hearing this. They barely had any connection, yet rumors could still spread. It was truly bizarre. Lin Shui then told Feng Qing everything she had heard today. The content had even reached an indescribable level. She couldn't help but sigh, saying that if such rumors reached Junyi's ears, Lu Rushi would definitely be torn to pieces by Junyi. This time, Feng Qing finally lost her composure. She needed to quickly go to the prince's mansion to check. If she was late, certain people might really end up being chopped up. This time, Feng Qing ran at what seemed like 250 miles per hour. As soon as Feng Qing saw Lu Rushi, she noticed he was carrying a large stone on his back. She was shocked, wondering if he was planning to participate in the World Cup carrying this stone. Unexpectedly, when Lu Rushi saw Feng Qing, he immediately put down the large stone and laid on it. Seeing this, Feng Qing suspected that he might have really been kicked out of the prince's mansion by Junyi. This time it was Lu Rushi's turn to be confused. He didn't understand what Feng Qing meant. Why would Junyi drive him away? After asking, she learned that what Lu Rushi was holding wasn't a stone at all, but clothes. Was he planning to sell clothes? Just then, Junyi walked out from inside. As soon as Feng Qing saw Junyi, she told him about the rumors concerning Lu Rushi and her. Fortunately, Junyi wasn't foolish and knew the two had absolutely no connection. Knowing that Junyi hadn't taken this matter to heart, Feng Qing finally let out a sigh of relief. Junyi suggested that to make the rumors disappear on their own, Feng Qing should be seen closer to him, creating another rumor to divert attention. After all, they already had so many rumors, one more wouldn't matter. But Feng Qing didn't think so. This method would only treat the symptoms, not the root cause. After discussing, they both turned their attention to Lu Rushi. If they could find a wife for him, wouldn't the problem be solved? Junyi also thought this idea was good and readily agreed. To their surprise, when Liu Rushi heard this decision, he burst into tears. He never expected that the people he had been supporting all along would actually remember his name. He was truly moved. This time, he especially thanked the person who was forced to spread the rumors. This was undoubtedly the largest-scale matchmaking event in the capital's history, but also the shortest. The reason stemmed from some recent indescribable rumors circulating in the capital about Feng Qing and Liu Rushi. So, Feng Qing and Liu Rushi decided to find a wife for him to dispel the rumors naturally. This news was immediately known to Junmin's people. Junmin then arranged for a woman to infiltrate Liu Rushi's matchmaking queue. If that woman could successfully match with him, she would be able to keep track of Junye's every move. Junye's efficiency was very fast. This was the largest-scale matchmaking event in the capital in 100 years. However, Liu Rushi was curious. Since this matchmaking event was his main battlefield, where was his name? A handsome man pointed to a name on the canvas and said, "Look, isn't this it?" Liu Rushi glanced over and was so depressed he doubted his existence. Wasn't such small text giving him too much credit? The handsome man then explained that this was all Feng Qing's idea. This way, more people would come here for matchmaking. After explaining, the handsome man issued an on-the-spot arrest warrant for Liu Rushi, telling him to go home and sleep. Liu Rushi was unhappy. This was his matchmaking event, and he was supposed to be the main character today. If he left, who would vet the candidates for him? Unexpectedly, as soon as these words were spoken, Feng Qing, in disguise, walked over. She would be fully responsible for this interview. Liu Rushi looked at Feng Qing's shabby appearance and couldn't help but find it amusing. She didn't look like a refined lady at all. In his impression, this woman always knew how to dress in bizarre ways, as if she was going to participate in a World Cup beauty pageant. This time, the matchmaking queue was very long. The people were all very beautiful. However, it seemed that most of these people weren't here for Liu Rushi. It was said that their profiles would all pass through Junye's hands. These fangirls didn't care whether they were chosen or not. As long as Junyi could personally see their profiles and possibly remember their names, these women felt they would die of happiness. After the opening with the first two women, the people behind directly rushed forward. Almost all of them came for Junye's signature. Feng Qing couldn't help but sigh, realizing that even ancient people liked to chase after stars. At the same time, she also knew that these women were here for Junyi, not for any damn matchmaking. Seeing a group of women intoxicated by Junyi, she couldn't help but ask if Junyi was really that good. Unexpectedly, these women's praises for Junyi flowed like an endless river. But when they thought about the rumors between Junyi and Feng Qing, these people became unhappy again. They felt that such a good catch had been snatched by Feng Qing, this pig. As they spoke more enthusiastically, most of their verbal attacks were directed at Feng Qing. The insults made Feng Qing almost explode with anger. Until these people brought up her ancestors from 18 generations ago, Feng Qing finally couldn't bear it and took off her hat. These people had said such unpleasant things right in front of her. She couldn't stand to hear it anymore. When these people saw that Feng Qing was sitting right in front of them, their faces turned as black as century eggs. Feng Qing made things clear in front of these people. Today was Liu Rushi's matchmaking event. Junyi wouldn't come here to take a look, let alone have any involvement. She was afraid they would be disappointed. As soon as Feng Qing finished speaking, the queue that had been as long as a dragon instantly disappeared. The evil empress, in order to frame the woman, spread rumors everywhere. To naturally dispel these rumors, she specially organized a large-scale matchmaking event. However, surprisingly, all these women coming for matchmaking were here for her man. This made her very unhappy. When Feng Qing clarified that this matchmaking event was specially organized for Liu Rushi, the originally long queue was left with only one person. Looking at this scene, Feng Qing felt indescribably disappointed. She didn't expect Liu Rushi's character to be so poor that no woman wanted to marry him. However, just when Feng Qing thought this matchmaking event would end in miserable failure, a woman walked up to Feng Qing, saying she was willing to date Liu Rushi. This made Feng Qing extremely happy. Finally, Liu Rushi's wife problem was settled. She then cheerfully handed the woman a form, asking her to fill it out carefully. The woman happily agreed and said she would fill it out meticulously. By the end of the day, Feng Qing had screened 9 women. Currently, Liu Rushi was conducting the second round of interviews with them. The one standing in front of Liu Rushi now was already the 8th out of the 9 candidates. However, this woman seemed too open. Upon first meeting Liu Rushi, she kept kissing his big face uncontrollably. In the end, he was a bit dizzy. At this moment, the last candidate, AMU, finally walked in. This woman was quite satisfactory to Feng Qing. As soon as she entered, she bowed to Feng Qing and Junyi. She was outstanding in both appearance and etiquette. Unexpectedly, Liu Rushi exploded as soon as he saw AMU. He knew this woman. They grew up together and were childhood sweethearts. This was too coincidental. It made Feng Qing's gossip-loving soul unable to resist flaring up. As they chatted, they even held hands. Both were quite satisfied with this result, as Liu Rushi would no longer be single. Then Junyi seemed to think of something, and his gaze towards Feng Qing became extremely gentle. Now that even someone like Liu Rushi had a wife, while they hadn't yet consummated their relationship, it made him restless. Feng Qing looked at this guy's constantly overflowing sweet talk, and her goosebumps were all over the place. Usually, this man appeared cold and indifferent in others' eyes. How come he became so flirtatious in front of her? On the other side, Feng Qing noticed that Liu Rushi and AMU were almost done talking. So she called them over and asked how their chat went, and if they were planning to get married and have children. Unexpectedly, Liu Rushi said that besides AMU, he liked another woman. This stunned Feng Qing. Could it be that this guy was a bit of a playboy? Under Feng Qing's repeated questioning, Liu Rushi honestly confessed. The other woman he liked was the 8th candidate from earlier. Oh my, Feng Qing suddenly remembered. The 8th interviewee earlier was a woman called Yang Ling, who had kissed Liu Rushi uncontrollably during the interview. Given that Liu Rushi was a fickle-hearted man with rather low emotional intelligence, Junyi decided to personally vet his 2 love interests. This man had simultaneously fallen in love with 2 women. To help this fickle-hearted man find true love, the male lead decided to sacrifice his own charm. So the next day, Junyi called AMU to his room. He asked if she was willing to be his wife. This question stunned AMU. Then she finally realized that the prince had taken a liking to her. Sure enough, Junyi then went into full acting mode, telling AMU that since he saw her yesterday, he couldn't eat or sleep thinking about her. So he specially called AMU here today to ask if she would give him a chance. If she agreed, he would talk to Liu Rushi about it. AMU's face darkened slightly. She was unsure of Junyi's intentions. Could it be that he already suspected she was sent by the Dark King to get close to him, so he was deliberately testing her? Just then, Feng Qing suddenly burst through the door, cursing Junyi for being shameless and daring to steal his subordinate's childhood sweetheart. Junyi was displeased upon hearing this, who gave Feng Qing the courage to shout in the War Prince's mansion. The two argued heatedly over this. AMU suddenly felt overwhelmed with honor. She had heard rumors about Junyi and Feng Qing, but never imagined that Junyi would now have a big fight with Feng Qing over her. While AMU was still in shock, Feng Qing suddenly pointed at her, angrily accusing Junyi of liking someone without asking for others' opinions. AMU's mind trembled for a moment. Then she expressed her own wishes, saying she liked him very much. Hearing this answer, Junyi completely shocked both Feng Qing and himself. At this moment, they didn't know that AMU had already developed thoughts of attaching herself to Junyi. As long as she became Junyi's princess, she would no longer be threatened by the Dark King. However, Liu Rushi suddenly walked out, startling AMU, who had just confessed her feelings. She suddenly felt a bit flustered, with a bad premonition in her heart, not understanding why Liu Rushi was here. Feng Qing's gaze fixed on AMU made her uneasiness gradually grow. Sure enough, the next second, Feng Qing said this was just a play they had acted out, and she had fallen for it. Liu Rushi had thought that since he had met his childhood sweetheart, he could get married. Unexpectedly, this woman was like other women, approaching him to get close to Junyi. He was very angry. AMU frantically tried to explain, but found no suitable excuse. After all, from the beginning, she was indeed sent by the Dark King. Subsequently, she could only kneel down and seek Junyi's forgiveness. But the most wronged in this incident was still Liu Rushi. So Junyi decided to hand over the right to deal with AMU to Liu Rushi. After all, they were childhood sweethearts. Liu Rushi didn't deal with AMU too harshly. He just told her to get out and never appear before him again. This man had fallen in love with 2 women simultaneously, to choose which one was more suitable to be his wife. Feng Qing and Junyi acted out a play together to test the sincerity of both. After testing, it was revealed that AMU's matchmaking this time was to deliberately get close to Junyi, so she was eliminated. Next was a chubby girl called Yang Lin. Junyi used the same method, asking Yang Lin if she was willing to be his wife. To Junye's surprise, Yang Lin flatly refused. Even more surprising was that she saw through Junye's test at a glance. She also clarified her stance, saying she indeed came for Liu Rushi this time. Hearing Yang Lin say this, Fengqing and Liu Rushi also walked out from the room. They didn't expect this chubby girl to be not only pretty, but also quite smart. Everyone in the capital knew that Junyi fell in love with Fengqing at first sight. How could someone like Junyi possibly be interested in her? So she saw through Junye's deliberate test at a glance. To be honest, Fengqing still couldn't quite believe it. After all, she had personally interviewed 800 people, and except for this chubby girl in front of her, everyone else came for Junyi. But Yang Lin didn't seem to be lying. Finally, there was a woman willing to be Liu Rushi's wife. He felt very gratified and immediately asked Yang Lin when she thought it would be appropriate for him to propose. Unexpectedly, Yang Lin flatly refused, saying their relationship wasn't even close yet. This time, Liu Rushi was confused. Yang Lin had just said she came for him, but when he wanted to propose, she refused so decisively. It seemed she was playing him. But Yang Lin's next words completely shocked Liu Rushi. To propose to her family, he must pass various criteria, she said. The reason she came here for matchmaking was merely because she was interested in Liu Rushi. In the end, no one had expected Liu Rushi's matchmaking to conclude this way. Earlier, to get Junyi to agree to cooperate in acting out the play, Fengqing decided to grant Junyi one request as a reward. Junye's request was very simple. He wanted Fengqing to spend a whole day with him. To get Fengqing to agree to his request, he started acting cute and coy again. Fengqing couldn't resist this and immediately gave in, stating that she could accompany him to eat, drink, and have fun right away. He couldn't help it. He loved it when Junyi acted coy. However, in a restaurant, Feng Ling was contentedly drinking and enjoying himself. Suddenly, he noticed two familiar figures. When he leaned over to look, he almost dropped his jaw in shock. He had warned Fengqing so many times not to get too close to Junyi. Now they were out shopping together behind his back. This girl really didn't mind the rumors spreading. It was infuriating. Watching the two chatting and laughing, Feng Ling decided he couldn't let this continue. He had to find a way to stop it, to prevent his precious daughter from being snatched away for no reason. This couple in love went out shopping, not knowing they were seen by the girl's father. To prevent his daughter from being taken by a pig, when the waiter brought a bowl of tofu pudding, he deliberately bumped into him. At this time, the waiter didn't know that the bowl of tofu pudding he was carrying had been drugged. The unsuspecting waiter even put on an act for the masked person. Fengqing looked down at the tofu pudding, humming a tune. Junyi, who grew up in luxury, had never eaten tofu pudding before, so he carefully examined the contents of Fengqing's bowl. Fengqing smirked. This guy dared to covet her food. It seemed she needed to teach him a lesson. Then, Fengqing very thoughtfully scooped up a spoonful and offered it to him, saying she would personally feed him. In ancient times, people frowned upon such public displays of affection. She wanted to see how Junyi would handle it. At this moment, Junye's heart was filled with little hearts. He never expected Fengqing would be willing to feed him personally. Happiness came too suddenly. He felt he couldn't let Fengqing's kindness go to waste. He pulled Fengqing's hand closer and brought the spoon to his mouth. This scene left the onlookers stunned. How could these two be so shameless? Feng Ling, watching all this from a distance, was also panicking. That bowl of tofu pudding had been spiked by him. He had intended to teach Fengqing a lesson, but didn't expect Junyi to eat it so happily. He even wanted more. After all, it was fed to him by the person he liked. That feeling was simply too blissful. But some misfortune followed. For example, Junye's stomach made some discordant noises. He thought to himself, oh no, he was about to have an embarrassing situation in public. It was so humiliating. He remembered he had taken care of his business before leaving. How could his stomach hurt now? It felt very strange, but nature's call couldn't wait. So he quickly told Fengqing he needed to use the restroom. What he thought would be a one-time issue turned into 7 or 8 trips back and forth. It left Fengqing completely bewildered. Then Fengqing began to realize that Junyi started frequently using the restroom after eating her tofu pudding. It seemed the bowl must have been tampered with. She picked up the bowl and sniffed it. Sure enough, she detected an unusual scent of croton seeds. By now, Junyi was so tormented by the laxative that he could barely walk. He wanted Fengqing to check what was wrong. As soon as Junyi finished speaking, he collapsed exhaustedly onto Feng Qing. The waiter, seeing Junye's condition, was also confused, not knowing what was happening. Quick-thinking Feng Qing had the waiter prepare a room. Just as she was about to give Junyi a full-body check, unexpectedly, Feng Ling suddenly burst in. Seeing their strange position, he was shocked. He never imagined his daughter would be so forward as to climb onto a man's bed. It was infuriating. Feng Ling felt he needed to have a serious talk with Feng Qing. But during their conversation, something suddenly fell from Feng Ling's person. Feng Qing picked it up and sniffed it. Surprisingly, it contained croton seeds. It seemed he was the one who had drugged Junyi. Can you believe it? This woman just took a nap, and the news of her disguising as a man spread throughout the entire capital. If it were you, what would you do? In the imperial study, the two were happily discussing Feng Qing's situation when Lu Fei suddenly requested to see the emperor. This caught the emperor by surprise. The women in the harem were not to be trifled with. They wouldn't come looking for him without reason. The emperor asked her what the matter was. She deliberately hesitated, not knowing how to say it. Junyi, hearing this, showed no courtesy at all. If you don't know how to say it, then don't. This remark left Lu Fei quite embarrassed. She came here to complain. How could she not speak? She didn't expect Junyi to rebuff her so quickly. Lu Fei deliberately made the matter sound mysterious, successfully piquing the emperor's interest. At this point, Lu Fei didn't beat around the bush and directly told the emperor about Feng Qing's true female identity. She suspected such a person had ulterior motives. Whether that was true or not didn't matter. As long as the emperor thought so, it was enough. Lu Fei had expected the emperor to be very surprised by this news. After all, the entire capital had been kept in the dark. But looking at the emperor's reaction now, far from being surprised, he seemed rather pleased. What was going on here? Actually, Junyi had already told the emperor about this. He had always thought Junyi was homosexual. Now that Feng Qing turned out to be a woman, he couldn't be happier. There was no crime of deceiving the emperor either. This time, it was Lu Fei who was stunned. She didn't expect that in the end, she would be the fool. Her joy had been premature. Junyi stared at Lu Fei with narrowed eyes. Earlier, his men had noticed Fatty rushing to Lu Fei's place, and he sensed something was off. This woman wanted to use Feng Qing's identity against him. She was dreaming. As long as he was around, she wouldn't be able to harm a hair on Feng Qing's head. Meanwhile, Feng Qing had woken up. She didn't know that just because she took a nap, the situation outside had completely changed. Seeing Lu Rushi nearby, Feng Qing quickly grabbed his hand and asked about the crown prince's condition. Unexpectedly, Lu Rushi immediately shook off her hand and stepped back 3 meters. No joke, she was a woman now. If Junyi found out they were holding hands, he'd skin him alive. Feng Qing was confused by Lu Rushi's reaction. They were both men. Was such a big reaction necessary? At this point, Lu Rushi expressed sympathy to Feng Qing, saying, "Stop pretending. Now it's not just me, but the entire capital knows you're a woman." Lu Rushi's words completely shocked Feng Qing. How long had she slept? Her female identity had already spread throughout the capital. She was furious. Who had spread this information? Just then, Junyi suddenly spoke up, telling Feng Qing about Lu Fei's attempt to harm her. Given the situation, the first person Feng Qing thought of was her father. Back then, Feng Lin had gone mad because of his brother's death. If Feng Lin learned the truth now, what would happen? She couldn't imagine. Immediately, Feng Qing ran back home, ignoring Junye's attempts to stop her. This pregnant woman wanted to give the female lead a child. Little did she know Feng Qing was actually a woman. The final outcome would be tragic. Just as Feng Qing arrived at her doorstep, she encountered the mother and daughter. Feng Qing hadn't forgotten how this woman had schemed to frame her not long ago, shamelessly trying to marry her. However, this time the mother and daughter seemed to have learned their lesson. Upon seeing Feng Qing, they were polite and courteous. This proper behavior made her feel a bit uncomfortable. This time, Bayu's purpose in coming here was to ask for a favor. No wonder she thought, how could someone usually so bitchy suddenly become so agreeable? Somehow this woman had heard that General Yi Deji was on good terms with her and wanted to recruit Feng Qing in a consort Lu's faction as a spy. This scheme was well thought out, but Feng Qing immediately refused. Seeing this, Bayu accused Feng Qing of looking down on consort Lu. Feng Qing was displeased. How could this woman say such things? And her acting skills were terrible. Who did she think she was? Did the sun have to revolve around her every day? Seeing her words had no effect, Bai Yu again brought up consort Lu as her backer. If Feng Qing didn't agree, it would be defying an imperial order. Feng Qing laughed. It was the first time she'd heard of a consort ordering around a minister's child. Their general's mansion wasn't afraid. And besides imperial edicts, they didn't heed anyone else's words. Feng Qing's words were too unyielding, and the two immediately began arguing. In the end, however, Bai Yu was thoroughly defeated by Feng Qing's eloquence and shamelessness, and could only leave in anger. She had thought that mentioning consort Lu would surely make Feng Qing comply, and she had already boasted to Lu Fei that she would definitely win Feng Qing over today. Now look what happened. This stubborn brat was so obstinate. Well, she couldn't blame her for being ruthless now. Just then, a servant came to report that someone named Zhou Ruo wanted to see Bai Yu. Bai Yu was puzzled. Usually, her relationship with this young lady wasn't very good. At least not good enough for an unexpected visit. As soon as she opened her mouth, she said she had a grudge against Feng Qing. As they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Her purpose in coming here was to discuss with Bai Yu how to harm Feng Qing. Meanwhile, their enemy Feng Qing was at home, living like a kept woman. Unexpectedly, the housekeeper came running in, saying someone at the door was looking for her and claiming to be pregnant with her child. Feng Qing was stunned upon hearing this. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. He remembered that someone had already used this trick a while ago. He didn't know what was so great about their Feng family that people were desperate to get in. As soon as Feng Qing stepped out, a woman called out to him emotionally. Seeing the woman before him, Feng Qing was even more certain that he didn't know her at all. Someone must have sent her to frame him. But the onlookers didn't think so. Feng Qing's reputation was already bad, and now with this incident, even fewer people believed him. Seeing her chance, the woman kept asking Feng Qing if he was abandoning her and the child. In short, in front of everyone, she portrayed Feng Qing as various versions of a heartless man. Feng Qing was extremely annoyed by this situation, so he asked her various tricky questions, hoping to make the woman give up. Unexpectedly, the woman answered all of Feng Qing's questions, clearly having done her homework. Finally, Feng Qing had no choice. He had to agree to marry this woman. However, he also had a condition. After the child was born, they would do a blood test. If the child wasn't his, he wouldn't be lenient at all. The woman was completely thrown off by Feng Qing's words. She hadn't expected such a stubborn young master to think of a blood test. Faced with Feng Qing's words, the woman suddenly felt immense pressure. This woman likes to hold a mushroom while sleeping. Have you ever seen such a bizarre sleeping habit? Junyi, waking up from sleep, felt a bit confused. Who could tell her what was going on? How did her little mushroom end up in someone else's hands? It wasn't just Junyi. Feng Qing also felt dead inside. What on earth had she done? She had actually slept with someone else's little mushroom all night. Then Junyi belatedly realized, had they really done something unspeakable last night? If that was the case, then Feng Qing must take responsibility for him. There's no time like the present. It would be best to marry him today. Feng Qing was clearly frightened by this statement. He was a man now. Moreover, if Junyi remembered correctly, it was Feng Qing who carried him back to the room last night. So he must take responsibility. This amused Feng Qing. If everyone knew that the noble prince was gay, their expressions would surely be priceless. And if he remembered correctly, he had just touched the prince's left chest. For fairness, shouldn't he touch the right one too? Junyi was completely helpless against Feng Qing's roguish behavior. He was at a loss. After a heated discussion, Junyi decided that if Feng Qing went back to the prince's mansion with him for treatment now, he wouldn't pursue the matter of being slept with yesterday. Although Feng Qing knew this was a threat, he had to agree. Otherwise, if this matter reached his father, he wouldn't have an easy time either. Feng Qing looked around. He had to admit, although Junyi's character wasn't great, his arrangements were quite good. Just when Feng Qing thought he could finally rest well after a long day of turmoil, Junyi pushed open the door from outside again. Noticing Junyi, Feng Qing was startled. This dog of a man, why did he like to silently enter his room so much? Feng Qing could only wrap himself tightly in the blanket, carefully covering himself, afraid that this dog of a man would discover his true identity. Obviously, Junyi didn't understand Feng Qing's bizarre behavior and asked what he was doing. Feng Qing had never seen such a difficult man. He was the one who barged into his room, so how did it end up feeling like he was the one who had done something wrong? According to Junyi's explanation, he felt his condition had worsened and his foot had started to hurt. Feng Qing couldn't help but want to criticize Lu Rushi, that quack doctor. Usually, he was responsible for taking care of Junyi constantly. Not only could he not cure his leg, but he couldn't even take care of the person properly. Junyi was stunned. His leg condition had worsened, yet Feng Qing was so fierce. But he was showing concern after all. He then apologized to Feng Qing, saying it might have been due to catching a cold carelessly. Feng Qing thought he was hearing things. The mighty war prince actually apologizing to him? How rare. Then, Junye's words completely shattered Feng Qing's worldview. He slowly said, "So, Feng Qing, it's better if you personally take care of my body from now on." He knew things weren't that simple. Wasn't this emotional blackmail?